Hey guys, I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. I just wanted to do a quick intro before we go into the main part of the video. It's one of our first types of videos where we're doing more of a podcasting, just to see how things go, how we enjoyed it, anything like that. As of making this part of the video, this was now a couple weeks beforehand. I think it was about a week before the Colosseum came out. Whereas this is now about 2 weeks before, or sorry, 2 weeks after the Colosseum's come out. But I hope everyone enjoys the video. Let us know what your thoughts are on the various different topics and you know everything that we talk about. It'll be nice to see what everyone else's views are on those specific topics even. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoy the video and yeah, stay tuned for more. Cheers. So we got. Should we start with the mage training arena? That one, nice and easy. Kick it off.
Yeah, I think that's a good one to go just start diving into. I'm
Yeah.
lightly reading some more and more around it.
So the
Just
main gist that I've heard is that there's a lot of pain points that they're kind of picking up on from mage training arena. I mean, personally for me, I'm all for any changes, especially when it comes to the alchemy room and the grave. I think it's the graveyard, right? Yeah.
yeah, like the alchemy room. I guess the one concern I have with some changes there, because I think I was reading through, it was like some of them were like leaving the cupboard open, increasing the GP cap. I think those two are actually massive in my opinion.
Mm,
Uh, Making the rotations last a little longer. They were looking at like trying to increase it by like somewhere in like 30% or something along that line. Um, I'd be curious on what that does for XP an hour there. Because remember, Mage Training Arena kind of is a low to mid level training method.
yeah. Yeah, I'd say it's more of a med level. To be fair, I mean it really depends on the XP drops. Because let's be honest, like most people who go to MTA aren't going there for XP
Oh
really.
no.
Like you're gonna be going there more so for the hard diary requirement, which do I understand that it's a requirement for hard diaries? Yeah, I get it. Is it a pain to do every single time? Yeah. Does anyone like it? Mm, I would hope
No.
not. I would really hope
It's just
not.
a different breed.
Honestly, like it's not even yeah, and this is the thing, like they've got really old piece of content which is like and it hard locks a lot of content, especially for Iron Man. Like if you want like your top if you want a decent set of gear early on an especially on an Iron Man, you've got the Mage's book, you've got the Infinity Boots, which is essentially your best in slot boot until Eternals. You've got Bones to Peaches, and if you see an Iron Man with Infinity, they've either gone for collection log or they're absolutely bonkers and think that that's the best way to get their best gear early on an Iron Man, which, I mean, all the power to you, but yeah. Um,
I, I think the other thing that might bring it more into relevancy, kind of breaching into another subject later on here with the Project Rebalance, with them changing the occult's damage percentage and potentially putting that on Eternal Boots.
yeah.
Maybe this is something that's kind of being preemptive on that to make that Infinity Boot grind not as miserable.
Mm, that's the thing. I'd like to. I think. Yeah. Like I said, I'm all here to make like the MTA like way less painful than it already is. I don't think telekinetic room and the enchanting chamber is like the worst ones. They're quite quick, aren't they? So theirs is probably just
Um,
going to be making the process a little less painful. Like I think in the enchanting room, it gives you. I think I remember hearing that there's like a chance that you can get given like bonus dragon stones to enchant or something. Um,
yeah, for the enchanting room, they were looking at that. But the other thing, though, like I did it in leagues, and then I did it a little bit on my gim.
hmm,
And one thing I did run into is actually a lot of there's still quite a bit of bots at Mage Training Arena, and that they're going to the enchanting room and only doing Dragonstones and Hopping Worlds.
Mm.
So I guess that's the other kind of negative that I see. If we're, because I think that the enchanting room, personally, I think we shouldn't be relying on those Dragonstones. It should be a method that can provide a social environment around it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way of looking at it. I'm wondering, I mean, I haven't read the full thing yet on the especially on the enchanting room, but I'm feeling like wouldn't it make more sense that rather than Dragonstone being like the go-to, that it makes it so that certain types are the go-to. So like it
Oh,
changes
for
like the
sure.
type that is the go-to, so it gives you bonus points based on the gem that's currently like, you know, powered up or something. And it makes it a little bit less like you, because you're at that point you're kind of engaged on the, especially for people who don't want to be there long. Like for me, for instance, like if I was to make another like Iron Man account or something, I would want to be able to go in there and get the best possible points an hour so that I can get out of there ASAP. And if that means by making it more engaging by boosting emeralds and then it changing every 10-15 minutes or whatever to sapphire and then dragonstone and then something else, then I feel like that might be better. What do you think?
Yeah, no, definitely. Like I think finding a way to speed up that process. I mean, so you were saying that you don't mind doing the telekinetic room. For me, actually, that is the most boring room
Yeah.
out of all of them, and it's just me. And I think that they kind of hit the nail on the head with the changes they wanted to make around that,
Mm-hmm.
where they're going to make it where essentially um the golem thing
Mm.
actually moves faster. So then you're not sitting there waiting for it to move to the next spot. Because like in
Mm.
some of those mazes, I mean, once you get it down, you get it down. You know the exact route that you got to run through
Yeah.
and like how to set it up. And sometimes you spend quite a bit of time waiting for the little golem essentially to make it.
Yeah. Yeah, I do remember there being some. I think actually they have it in the picture. I've just got brought the post up now. They've got that picture of that really long stretch that it has to go down. And I remember when
Yeah,
I'm doing it and it takes forever for it to like, dawdle its way over and finish the room before you go to the next maze.
you got me over there spam clicking the whole time,
Yeah,
trying to get it to go faster.
yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think it's quite a good idea because then it almost implements this idea of like again, like because I think there's so many different types of ways of playing this game, and one of those ways that I think is becoming a little bit more popular, especially with since the combat achievements have come out, but maybe just in general is maybe like speed running it, or maybe not speed running it because let's be honest, there's no times behind it, but like again, there's that mentality of being able to just dive into a piece of content and try and be as efficient as possible. And it's just one of those areas that if things like that are processing quicker, you'll want to be able to do it as fast as possible. And if it's quite effective in how you're doing it, it might actually make the rooms a bit more engaging rather than everything taking ages to do. So I
Yeah,
feel
and I
like
think that introduce like I think you hit also kind of a point that maybe wouldn't be a bad idea for like that specific room,
mm,
which is actually like having times for like it'll like maybe have it rotate between 10 different mazes and there is a I don't know, a global PB on that maze.
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Like I think that could spark a little bit more interest in it. I think it might brand. I'd have to think about like if I was looking at it from like a development perspective, whether that be something worth investing the time into.
Yeah, for sure.
Just, just because like I look at quest speed running,
Mhm.
cool concept, but it was dead content from the start.
Yeah. I actually haven't even touched that quest speed running, and I like to think that usually in some cases, like us last night doing the trio CM's GM time, you know that kind of stuff is fun for me. But you tell me, oh yeah, go do quest speed running, I'm like, I'm just not it, yeah, I'm not
It needs to be
interested.
group Like for me, it needs to, like speedrunning perspective. For me, it feels like it has to be in a group. Like it's something that you can do with other people and enjoy it that way.
Yeah, I think that's an element. I also think for me specifically, I think the bigger part of it for me is the rewards. I don't
Mhm.
really find the rewards very enticing. Like it's all very don't get me wrong, the reward what they've got for the rewards aren't the worst looking rewards, but they're just rewards that I would just never personally use. You'll never really find me in graceful gear. Um but then again, I pet hunt and I do, I'm going for combat achievements and things like that. Like the only other time that you'll find me doing anything that isn't really specified that I'm at the redwoods, or I'm like at the bank doing like some form of skilling or something. Like I don't really typically wear what they've
Well, it
got
makes it bad.
on,
Yeah.
but I'm wondering, like, if that maybe if they made the rewards for quest speed running a little bit more enticing, that they might have offered something a bit better, or maybe if they had some of the like more quests to it sooner, maybe it might be, and maybe probably less worlds doing it as well. There, there's. I feel like I'm gonna have a quick look and see how many there are, but I feel like they've got quite a few worlds dedicated to it.
Well, I think part of
Um,
that though is because it's not instanced. So like when you go to that world, there's
mm,
other people in that world, so then other people can offset your speed run.
yeah, they've got one for each zone, which makes sense.
Which, yeah, that makes sense on that front. Because I guess that was one thing that if I do recall when I was running, because I did quest speed running just for the graceful recolor, because, well, sadistic on that and want to collect all of the
Yeah.
gracefuls. But yeah, like that was one thing I kind of ran into was I had a couple times where my run got offset because of like little things like that, where like someone moved something over.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah. I just, yeah, that I suppose to some degree that does make it a little bit more painful. Um,
I guess for people that are maximum efficiency, quest speed running, like the quest speed running reward, there is one that actually is worth it, and it's the home teleport animation. It is
mm,
actually a little bit quicker than the others.
really, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
it's like it's not a lot quicker, but if I remember correctly, it is technically the fastest TP like home teleport in the game.
Now that's interesting. That totally that totally doesn't make it any more justifiable, but it's
No,
interesting.
like how often are you gonna do a speed run and you're teleporting back to Lumbridge or
Quick, I've got to get back to Lumbridge so I can go and re-gear. Wait, what?
I
Um,
feel like it would only come relevant for like the Gillinor games where like you don't get your own teleport, so you have to use that.
yeah, no, for sure. I think I yeah, I think those kind of rewards. I mean, some of the league rewards have been absolutely amazing.
Oh, for sure.
Like they do really good rewards. Like and I actually don't have much of an issue with those kind of rewards. In fact, I actually kind of like the whole idea of cosmetic scape, if you will, or fashion scape, however you really want to look at it. I think it's quite interesting, especially the ones that you have to grind for. Like you've got the Fang, you've got the Twisted kits, you've got the hard mode kits, but then you've also got things like the League stuff. Like I don't know about you, but while
The dins.
I'm a little bit salty about the dins, but at the same, like, not from a perspective of how it looks. I think the dins looks amazing. Um, Granted, it is basically just Zuck's shield small, but I for me personally, it's still a great reward from Leagues 4. Would I have wished it to come from something like Zuck in the first place, though? Yeah, yeah, I would have.
I I think I
Um,
could have saw them like with the Colosseum adding in um I don't know, like once you've completed an Inferno run, adding in something kind of like the Six Jads challenge, but like throw in something that's like a Zuck challenge. I don't know how you could build that out, but like, yeah, like imagine like I don't know a Zuck challenge where it also spawns 3 Jads, and
Oh,
if you complete that, then you could get the shield.
what do you think we are, Port Kazard?
Like, well, I mean, if you think about it, like, yeah, you get well, and that's what I mean. That would make the prestigious aspect of that item, right?
Oh, 100%.
Like, I think 3 Jads is like if you did, I should say 3 Jads like they are in Inferno, where it's a tick slower than it is in the Jad challenge.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, it makes sense. I actually kind of like that idea. I think that's actually something that's like not like the Inferno, because I don't know if were you playing quite actively when the Inferno came out originally?
I was watching it, like I was watching streams, I believe, at the time, but I wasn't actively playing.
Yeah, I remember. I remember Inferno came out. These are the top two times that I've ever seen. The game like really peak in interest for a lot of people was Inferno and Top, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
I just wish I could experience that, even if it's just one more time. Experience that kind of level of just pure excitement for the game like that. I remember watching like Boaty and Wooks and all that doing the Tob run, like the world's first Tob run, and watching Wooks get hit like the world's first Inferno Cape, and just like, oh my god, like it took like 2 or 3 days for someone to get the Inferno Cape, and it's like,
Oh, I'd be curious if that might be the way with the Colosseum coming out next week.
you know what, I'd be surprised, but if it did, I would be very happy. Um,
Because the one thing that I did see too with the Colosseum in the news post, or I can't remember if it was a news post or a social media post, they
mm,
made it sound like the quiver actually was something you got if you made it to like the last couple waves.
really?
I thought I saw because like they were like, "Can you finish the Colosseum and get the quiver?" Or it was something along those lines, and I was like, "Huh."
Interesting.
Why are you saying finish here? I'll see if I can try to find that while we're talking.
Yeah, no, that'd be interesting. I am I'll be brutally honest with you, and I think I've mentioned this to you before in kind of passing comments when we've talked about Varlamore and various other areas before. And I haven't really been too confident in the whole idea of Varlamore, and I think we could probably expand on that later down the line, or maybe for another video. But I remember talking. I'm sure it was you and maybe someone else I was talking to about it with Varlamore. How I wasn't really particularly excited at first. I kind of thought, do you know what? This is just kind of like a ploy. Thinking this is just another way of just making it seem like, oh yeah, we're adding content for you guys to do, but realistically speaking, there's not really that much to do. Um, then again, I didn't
It,
really take the understanding of the Colosseum. So
and I just sent it over to you here too. You can see the very end message says, "Should you manage to emerge victorious, you'll earn yourself the Daizana quiver." And that's where it was kind of like I was reading that. I'm like, leaving early, in my opinion, is not victorious. You failed.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, no, 100%. That's a good thing. Like there should be rewards for you to be able to get all the way to the end and be able to finish it and get something that's actually worth using. Um,
I guess the other thing I'm a little bit afraid of with Valimore, and I guess it's gonna show because do can we see Valimore on the map already or not? No,
uh,
we can't.
can we not?
Yeah, we can't see the actual regions yet.
Scout game.
But I'd be very curious to see if they have the same issue they had with Zaya, where they did the initial release of Zaya, and it was just everything was too spread out.
Yeah.
I think with Valimore there's going to be a lot of great content, especially once Part Two also hits.
Mm.
But I guess that's where I'm also curious to see what happens if they spread it out too much. Because like you got the Hunters Guild coming in, you got the Colosseum coming in. They'll probably be building things up for sailing to hit. Um, they've got the new barrows, which I think honestly I want to try that out. That looks like it'd be pretty fucking fun to do.
Yeah.
Um, and then you've got the possible new group boss that comes in part 2, which I don't know if you've been looking at Reddit. Some people have been coming up with some kind of cool ideas with how they were they wanted to offer that.
Mm. I
It's like,
oh, sorry, go on.
no, yeah, I was gonna say like someone was offering that the group boss essentially would actually be 2 bosses, and it would be a fire giant and ice giant boss that work together.
I have been waiting for some kind of mechanic like so. I don't know if you ever watched or played World of Warcraft very much, but they have bosses like similar to that style where you kind of have to do equal damage to both of them. It's kind of like Vanguards in a way, but they both have very different mechanics. Like it's essentially two sets of bosses with two very different mechanics, and you're dealing with them at the same time, which is hectic as hell. But it's there's a lot of fun to it as well. I mean, it maybe a bit more hectic and a bit more difficult in the style of game that we have here? Maybe, but I would like to see if someone could come up with something that is kind of like, designed that way. Um, because I think that's something that we actually kind of lack in a lot of the content recently is like you got things like Fasanis or well, more like regular. If I'm going specifically with group content, you've got regular Nightmare, you've got Nex, um, Toa to some degree because as well, and all of these different pieces of like anything from like the mid tier to the end game content, they don't really have much communication.
Right.
You
I'd
know.
be I'd be curious to see with the like the Barrows 2.0, because like I by the sounds of it, they're building it so defense is the main thing you want to go in with,
Mm,
which to me that kind of tells me that maybe it is going to be much more of what you're talking about, where it's actual like paying attention mechanics, dodging, like it's not just okay, I'm going to go in here and just brute force my way through it.
yeah, for sure. I think I like that, and I like the idea that the ideas that they've come up with recently with things like the DT2 bosses. This whole like if you get perfect kills, you get more rewards, or like the
Mm-hmm.
reward is amplified, and it those kind of like trying to draw out more of the mechanical side of things. Especially for anyone who's done like the Awakened or watched anyone do the Awakened bosses, like the real key to attention to like these different ways of dealing with mechanics. With the Awakened Vardorvis really kind of strings true to that kind of statement where your natural gameplay in Awakened Vardorvis is completely or somewhat different to what you would have in say uh like Chambers for instance, right? So um if you have essentially Awakened Vardorvis is very defensive
Chaotic.
gameplay. Very defensive, very defensive. Yeah, getting annihilated for like 150 HP in 2 ticks, but a lot of it's very defensive gameplay. You focus on your movement first, and then you focus on your prayers, and then you focus on attacking, which is very backwards to how we usually play, which is click boss hard, boss dead. you know,
Right.
which I
Well,
actually
and I,
really like.
well, and I think that they also do a good job with that with like Tob and hard mode Tob,
Mm,
like the Nilo room, for example. You really don't want to like when you're flipping between the different like the final Nilo and the Nilo room. The last thing you want to do is change into your weapon spec and then try to get your prayer.
yeah.
No, you do that and good night. You're done.
You're not that guy, pal. You're not that guy.
Yeah. But no, I guess I'm a little bit more on the optimistic side of Valamore, where
mm,
I think it will introduce a lot of stuff.
mm,
Um, I'd be very curious to see um, how it just gets handled in general, because like I think right now they're trying to make content that low to med level can enjoy. So like Scurious is a good example. I think for the lower community, that little rat is probably one of the best introductions to people for PVM. Because like you've got to dodge rocks,
Mm-hmm.
you've got a monster spawning other monsters, you have to change your prayers in time because it uses all three combat styles.
Mm.
I think it's a good like. I kind of wish that was available when I started playing because that would have been a hella good introduction to
Yeah.
PVM.
I think, there's a lot of this is my thing, right? I feel like that it's great that they've made such a big emphasis on trying to make their introduction to PVM, because I remember, and I'm sure you may remember, back in the original RuneScape before it turned into EOC, you know, trying to get into Bandos groups, like even Bandos was fucking scary. I
Oh,
was like
Bandos,
I was like
you
a
were freaking
kid.
wailed.
Yeah, I mean, I was a kid back then, so like, being like 9 or 10 years old, and you're like sat there like, ah, oh no, Bandos. Like, I was a terrible, I was a terrible.
Well, I think it's also one of the like it's one of those scenarios too that I think with the at probably the average age of a RuneScape player is probably in its mid 20s at least, like
Yeah,
average.
yeah.
I would say mid to late 20s, and so of course we've gotten better mechanically around things like that versus
Mm.
like when we were little, like shit, when we were little, we'd go to Barrows, you would get accidentally nuked by Darox. You get nuked by Darox now, and you're memed for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
Like,
Do you remember the jungle demon in Monkey Madness 1?
oh, I was afraid of that thing.
Yeah. I remember I was at one of my friend's house, and he was doing Monkey Madness 1. He had all his gear, and it was back then, it was like if you die, you lose all your stuff, right? And back
Oh
then,
yeah.
like 150k was like, a lot of money. And he lost it all because he died, and he quit instantly. And it's just like, those little like memories of the game is just crazy. And you're right. Like, we grow up and we get better at the game and stuff like that. I just and don't get me wrong, this game is not the easiest to pick up on. I don't feel
Well,
like.
I think it kind of goes against how games are functioning today. Because
Mm,
I mean, old school is, especially old school RuneScape, is a very grindy game, and I would say there's not really like even other MMOs cannot really compare to the level of grindiness this game is.
yeah.
Like, I mean, you think about it. Like when I created my group Iron Man when that got released, it took me a year to get to max level,
Yeah.
and I was not putting like an hour a week, like an hour a day into that account. I was putting in some pretty like heavy hours into that account.
For sure. Yeah.
Like and I think that's what it makes it hard to kind of like find that right balance. I
Mm,
think.
yeah. I think for me, like, I get, I'm very open to the idea of them trying to get new players in, because I always think like that's important as like just from an integrity perspective of the game. You always have to have new players coming in. There's always got to be like, new avenues for these newer players to be able to, excuse me, come in and join the game and learn all these different aspects. And it's a very intricate game. I mean, it's a tick based system, which is very unusual in, like you said, in nowadays games. um and just the general gameplay style and all, and how things are handled is all very different in some capacity. I think for me it's also very difficult as an end game player who's kind of gone through and done a lot of these things. I've gone through the motions. I try to relive it through the Iron Man, which, to be fair, I learned some new things and done some new things that I wouldn't have necessarily have done before. But it very quickly gets to the point where you're like, well, I'm actually now at a similar stage as to what I'm on my main, and
Mm-hmm.
now I'm like, well, I need to try and figure out, like, I'm for my Iron Man, I'm grinding these end game content items, you know, mega rares and, you know, end game like Torva pieces and etc. etc. And on the main, it's kind of like, well, the only thing I really have now is combat achievements, pet hunting, and 200 mil skilling stuff. And it's like, I could go and do other pieces of content, like go and do speed running and try and break world records, or, you know, go and do something crazy like Port Khazard with his, you know, 22 or 27, you know, awakened orbs in one inventory kind of, you know, stuff like these cracked gameplay style stuff. And it's, you know, that's not I'm not saying that that's not available to the game, because ultimately the game's a very big sandbox. But I feel like to some degree the end game perspective, or the end game players have kind of been left in, not in the dark, because realistically we get new content all the time, but it's not very mechanically challenging. And I'm really hoping that Varlamore offers something new and technical, because for me it's not really about the lore anymore. I just like, I enjoy playing the game and its grindiness, but I want it to be mechanically difficult, which is why I'm kind of hoping at some point they bring something, and I'm hoping the Colosseum's like this, a Inferno Mark 3 essentially, because it's technically a Mark 2 of the fight caves, right?
Yeah, well, I guess the Colosseum, I'm very curious to see how they build that out, because I know they were mentioning at one point that the idea is like people could come in, do the lower wave, like the earlier waves, and still get technically rewarded for it, and then you can push through and do the high waves for a bigger reward. I would hope they kind of balance that well, just because like you don't want to make it where, like, because some people are going to just instantly look at GP an hour, right? And so some people might look at it and say, okay, should I push through, let's say, to wave 60? Will that make me the most GP an hour and gamble at wave 60? Or just running 10 times to wave 20 is better? Like, you know what I mean? Like, they've got to find a way to... I would guess that they're going to probably make it where, like, getting to the super high waves are going to be much more worth it than doing, like, a bunch of the lower waves. Just because, like, you got to create that risk versus reward, right? Because I think well, we'll have to see how they really build it. To my understanding is the Colosseum's whole concept was risk versus reward.
Right, yeah.
And I like that. I think it creates it makes you really try to push yourself to that next level.
That's it as well. Like, I think that's like a big part of it, is that we've kind of broken the game a lot, and not in a bad way. Like, you know, the whole tick manipulation was such a groundbreaking discovery for the game. I feel like, you know, and you look at even like PKing, you know, back in the day when people weren't barely even doing like a 4-way switch, and now you've got people doing like these monstrous I mean, granted, a lot of them are AHKing, which probably doesn't, you know, yell out the greatest reputation for PKs, but the PKs that do these like monstrous switches, or, you know, are very very calculated PKers, you know, Odeblock, when it comes to his I can't remember what the type of PKing is called now. Like
Bronze Man mode?
No, not the Bronze Man mode. The one where where he's taking like off all his armor. It's the venge PKing and stuff like that. You know, going for these, like, you know, all that kind of these different
doing a quick venge bomb essentially.
Well, yeah, like you take off all your armor, and then you'd have your venge right as they're about to hit you, so that they maximize the hit on you. So like say if you had like your armor on, they could only hit like a 30, but if you take your armor off, they'd hit like a 56. So you take your armor off right at the tick that they're going to hit you, you get venged, and then you'd AGS Gmaul with one tick, and that's them just deleted like 160 HP, for instance. Like, that kind of gameplay is insane. and it's great. Like, I love how the game has progressed like that. The problem is that you know, again, you've got all this content that tries to bring in these new players, and that's absolutely fine. It's just a matter of trying to also find content that caters to those people who have kind of, you know, mastered a deep level of the game.
I think one thing too that I'd want to look at here is like we always keep hearing that when they're trying to do some of these bigger changes that require engine rework, is that it's just 1 gram mess that makes it take so much longer to do some of these changes that could be either great quality of life updates or even some of those other releases. I'm personally kind of an advocate for, hey, don't do any big releases for the next 3 months, but fix the back end system so you guys can push updates easier.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. 100%.
Because like then we can, when they do that, then we can start getting into like other MMO, like shit. You can get into like what RS3 is doing. Like how often does RS3 have a big update? Like they push them out probably 2 to 3 times a year at least.
Yeah.
I mean, old school, we got TOA a year and
It's almost
year
2
and a
years.
half ago.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's been that long
So,
already.
yeah.
Oh my
So like
god.
TOA's been a year and a half. DT2 has been what?
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
And like DT2 I think was a huge release, but that's I'm trying to think if we had any other really big updates outside of those two in the last 2 years.
Next came out like 3-4 years ago, didn't you? No, that was
No,
Nightmare.
Next came out. Well, actually, so Next was in between there because Next came out in January after TOA.
Technically, you've got the combat achievements. That was a fairly big update to come out. Actually,
was it full? I thought combat achievements were they were out before TOA.
Yeah,
it was they revamped them after TOA to make it so it was just a point-based system.
Yeah, I think so. The Wilderness update. That was a big one.
That one, I think that was a well accepted change. I think it was the right decision. I think that the way that they're having them function now makes them way more interactive and way more enjoyable. Granted, they need to find a way to combat the bots on it, but I don't know if there really is an end solution.
That's such a big topic, and I feel like that's again another one that I would like to save for another conversation down the line. But to quickly touch on it, the whole bot situation going on right now. Do you know what? I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, especially like Sebe and his podcasts. Great set of podcasts. If you've never listened to them, I highly recommend some of them. They are great podcasts to listen to. But a few of the guys, I think King Condor's second one with Sebe, they talked about botting as well, and they were talking about it quite a bit, saying that they were seeing bots around quite a bit. Do you know what? I never see them. Now maybe that's because I'm just not looking, or maybe I'm in places that they just aren't there. But I very rarely see them unless you're like obviously at the GE and they're spamming at like GE, or you know. I see a lot of them at Next, to be fair. Since I've started my Next grind on my Iron, I see them a lot.
But, I was gonna say I see quite a few at Next. I mean, I never ran the singles plus version of the Wildy bosses, so I never really ran into them much there.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've been told that the singles plus is like a living nightmare with bots.
Yeah.
I will say, so I just was trying to do that Fasani Nightmare CA, and I would see an occasional bot run by. I wouldn't say it's as bad as it was before, and I think it's because a lot of those bots have now defaulted to Nex because the Fasani's Nightmare is really not near as profitable as it used to be.
Yeah.
But like I still was seeing a handful of like Fasani Nightmare bots.
Yeah. And going on to Fasani's, actually, you know, I feel do you know what? I don't mind for Sarni's Nightmare. I actually enjoyed doing Nightmare with you and Chris the other year during leagues. That was so much fun.
Oh, it's
Potentially because of just, I
a
can't
little
remember.
nostalgia, a little bit of.
Not even the nostalgia. I think obviously you had the I can't even remember what they're called now. The like special abilities like Berserker and all that, like the different perks that you got.
Oh
Um,
yeah, the relics.
that's it, the relics. I felt like that made obviously the piece of content a little bit more engaging, but I know a lot of people don't really like Nightmare, and if you're going to Nightmare, the chances are, unless you're a pet hunter or an Iron Man, and even then, most of the items there are really useless, and it's a bit of a shame because you have two whole bosses essentially that are,
Dedicated to
yeah, a armor set,
a
technically
great
three,
weapon.
yeah, three
Four.
separate staffs, yeah, four weapons in total, um, and it's just no one wants to do it. I don't even
Well,
like. Sorry, go on.
oh, no, go ahead. That's my fault.
Oh, no, it's alright. I thought like the boss isn't that bad. Like obviously you do like 2000 KC and you think, God damn, this is awful. But do 2000 of anything and you think, God damn, this is awful. You know, um, but from the perspective of someone who's only done maybe about 200 KC, 300 KC total across the both variants, I don't think it's that terrible of a boss to be honest. It's just it's not the greatest, don't get me wrong, but it's not the worst. I think a lot of people just kind of look for what's the best money and has the best looking pets, and you have a piece of equipment, especially as an Iron Man now. If any for anyone who's even got a slight keen eye on how like all the rebalances and stuff, Torva is now technically better than Inquisitors in pretty much every instance. Um, Apart from I think like maybe one or two niche positions, and I think
Nightmare.
yeah,
So
basically, and it's like I wish they didn't just shut out a whole piece of gear like that. Um, I feel
well,
like sorry, go on, you go.
yeah, I was just gonna mention with like Nightmare, kind of what you're talking about, the GP an hour. The problem that I think that you see there is because it's a little too much, in my opinion, of you got to grind it to make it profitable.
Yeah,
Because like if you look at the regular drops at Nightmare, um the regular drops are atrocious.
yeah,
They are not worth, like if you go there, if they took the uniques off that table, that boss would be non-existent.
yeah, yeah, 100%.
And I
It's
think that's kind of where they gotta improve. I think too, like it's the same thing with them talking about. I don't know if you saw at one point they talked about with Corporal Beast making it where it actually is being treated like a group boss.
oh God, please, oh my God, that would be legendary. Why is that still not a thing? Like,
I think it's just dedicating the time. I think they know that the community wants it,
yeah,
and it's just they don't have the time to do it.
yeah. Well, that's crazy though. Surely it doesn't actually require that many changes because surely most other bosses shared some kind of similar coding. That's at least that's in my mindset. They would share similar coding in terms of being able to distribute the loot out. I hope they don't do it in the same way that they do it at Next because the way Next shares loot is dog shit. Um, I hate the way that
Oh, you're talking about where like split it essentially just drops like four items and splits it amongst everyone that was in the kill.
yeah, it's the what like for the mechanic of how it splits basic drops. I think it's the worst way it could possibly have been. The idea that I don't mind the
Well,
MVP part, but
I think the other thing though with Next though is like they 100 like it that was 100% backported, and I think that's the same with Corp.
Mm.
And so with it being backported, it used the like how the code functioned before, I believe. And I think that's part of it, and maybe that's the reason why we haven't seen Corp changed yet,
Mm.
is because they now have to revamp the way that Corporal Beast is working.
Yeah, that actually makes sense, to be fair. Yeah, I
Because
suppose.
you notice all the other like later bosses that come out, none of them use that same mechanic as Nex.
Yeah, yeah,
Like Scurious doesn't. Like I'm just gonna use Scurious because it's a recent boss. Wieldy bosses don't. Um, I mean, the raids is a different system altogether. I don't lump that in with there,
yeah,
but like, I think it's more of that aspect that like they would have to do a they'd have to revamp the loot system on both those bosses, and that's cracking open old code, which I don't know how I would feel about that.
yeah. I feel like there's two things here. One is that they have to be able to there's certain bosses that just still need their loot tables updated, whether that's the way that it distributes the loot itself or the loot it contains itself. I mean, they did a fantastic job with Scorpia. I mean, talk about a boss that beforehand was literally only for people who did pet hunting, you know, maybe the odd occasional Iron Man or hardcore Iron Man or PvP hardcore Iron Man, RIP Torvesta's hardcore, um, you know, that goes to Scorpia for the malediction and the odium shard, you know, and now it's like, actually, especially as a pet hunter, if I want to go over there, I actually make money. I'm actually
Yeah.
risking stuff, and that makes that area of the wildy also more bountiful for PKers, which again, I'm actually someone who's very for making sure that the PKers are being fed just as much in terms of what they want for content as we do as PVMers, because I love watching people PK. I love watching PK videos, and I think
Well, like,
sorry, go on.
oh, I was just gonna mention, like, you look at with like the PKers too. It's been, I like the introduction of new weapons. Like you look at like Bofa starting to be used in PvP. Like when
Mm-hmm.
that started, that was super exciting, super fun to sit back and watch because of the risk versus reward. Virtus is another great example of that.
Yeah, yeah. I I remember, like, even like with the Fang as well. Like before the Fang obviously crashed to oblivion. Um, Watching people like take the Fang, even the Light Bearer creates a whole new dynamic with PKing. Now I guess there's nothing that really beats the Light Bearer, just because, you know, having quicker regen spec is just infinitely better than most in most scenarios. But
Well, yeah, and isn't so it's what is it with the light bearer from 0 to 100? It's like 2.5 minutes, isn't it, or something like that?
I don't know the specific timings, but that sounds about right, actually.
Yeah, I think it's like 2.5 versus like, yeah, 2.5 sounds right because without the light bearer, it's 5 minutes for full spec bar,
Yeah,
and so I mean I think it's huge for PvP on that because how often does a fight last 5 minutes versus how often does a fight last 2.5 minutes? That's a
yeah,
big difference.
yeah. Yeah, I know how. Don't get me started. 2.5 minutes versus 5 minute TBs. Oh my lord.
Yeah.
2.5 minutes feels like a century, let alone 5 minute when someone full TBs you. And I kind of miss the whole. That's the other thing, actually. Going backpedaling on the Wildy reworks that they did. The only thing I kind of wish, and I think I heard someone mention this, one of the mods maybe, or someone brought up this idea. It actually might have been again Sebe and King Condor's podcast, but someone mentioned about this idea of basically, you know how you and a load of other people do it. You know how we bring out our scouts for the PvP worlds? Probably not helping contributing to the idea of the whole PK as being successful and all that kind of stuff by doing that. But you know, um, we do use scouts, and they have someone proposed the idea of basically making it so that after a certain period of time, there is essentially like a visibility fog that clouds around the account if it stands around like a certain area near the entrances to the multi-variants and even the single pluses, I think. So basically your scout becomes null and void of being able to see anything in the area.
I would guess what people would do then is they'll just log in and out, right?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can think, well, I think it might be like an effect that you can't do like the PK skull, like
Okay.
it lasts through your logout timer the same as like your gravestone doesn't, it stops when you log out. So that's the only thing I can think that they can circumvent that whole, you know, um
Sorry, I'm giggling because all that's going through my head is, "Hi, my name's Settled, and welcome to my fog-locked Iron Man."
oh my god. Add that to the list of crazy ideas that man comes up with. Um, yeah, no, I just one of those things where like the core principle of the idea actually makes a lot of sense, and it gives the PKers a lot more of a fighting chance. The problem then is that you've got the rune light plugins, man. Like, especially if you've got NPC indicator, like the fog would pretty much have to grey out your entire screen, so you can't see anything but your inventory.
And your map.
Yeah, and your map, and just have to pray. But even then, you might have the wilderness alert, and it'll just sense if a white dot appears on your screen, basically, and just starts doing the wee woo.
I guess from my perspective, though, when it comes to that wildy content, is I think that we need to kind of, if we're going to revitalize it from a PvP perspective, we really need to revitalize it as a PvP. Like where it's actually players versus player. It's not prey versus predator.
Yeah.
Like, because like I think that that's where PvP gets the bad rap, in my opinion. Is I don't think people directly hate people that enjoy PvP. It's more of an instance where they hate the concept where they go do some content out there and they're preyed on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Like it,
yeah.
like I think that if they can find a way to um essentially revitalize the PvP community, like the actual PvP community, I think that's where uh it's going to be beneficial for both.
Yeah.
Like you look at chivalry being trying to, like, they in one of the recent polls they tried to give chivalry to peers.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee that got shot down purely because of the predator versus prey. Like, oh, why I've got a level 80 account. Yeah, I definitely want a peer coming up and hitting me even harder than it does today. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
let's be real, like, especially with like the Void Waker before it gets nerfed and everything, chances are if like someone's gonna catch you out, you're probably dead anyway, unless you've got like Dinny B with like Missouri top and bottoms at like Chaos Altar and stuff, and even then it's like you take Bruise and you pray Mage and all this kind of stuff.
I still, so kind of going to that poll that was released around chivalry.
Yeah.
I'm kind of upset that they blocked that one out from peers. Like, even as someone that doesn't PK at all,
yeah,
like, at the same time, why should peers be miserable having to activate reflexes and strength? So like incredible reflexes and strength, and then like, you know what I mean? Like having to switch between them. If anything, they should introduce, in my opinion, some type of prayer. Not as good as Piety, Rieger, Augury, but essentially a prayer similar to that for peers that doesn't boost defense.
Well, this is the thing. I think you still have access to Steelskin. That's the one. So you still increase your defense by 15%. Obviously, your one defense being increased by 15%. I don't think it really does. Well, it's still better than nothing, I suppose. But I think the idea was that they just wanted it to collate those three prayers, wasn't it? It was basically just to collate Steel Skin, Incredible Ultimate Strength, and Incredible Reflexes into one prayer. And that is still less than Chivalry in terms of the statistical increases that it gives.
Yeah.
It's still less than Chivalry. And people were saying, I think there was a Reddit post saying, oh, you know, it doesn't fit the lore. It's like, well, arguably you could just fit it in the same storyline, just further down the line, rather than it being in King's Ransom. You do it at Holy Grail.
I was gonna say, introduce as a prerequisite quest, because King's Ransom requires 60 defense.
Yeah.
So like, no matter what the piety, like even if you created a 70 prayer pure, you would still never get it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's something that you'd almost have to introduce as a prerequisite, like an earlier quest that unlocks like chivalry and everything, like. Because I mean, chivalry currently is pretty well a dead prayer. Like, even on an Iron Man, you push for 70. Like you don't go do King's Ransom and sit at 62 prayer. Like,
I totally didn't do that on my Iron Man for the longest time. Nah, I'm joking. I did do it it was like a week. I think I lasted about a week, and then I looked at it. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need piety. I can't be seen with this.
Well, and I mean, and on top of that, it's like, I don't know what Chivalry's prayer drain is off the top of my head, but I feel like the prayer drain probably is not really, like, below 70 prayer, is it really worth, outside of PKing, turning on, like, ultimate reflect, unless you're one tick flicking. So I'll use that always as, like, a caveat, but, like, there really is, those lower prayers, there's really no reason to really activate them unless you're, well, I mean, in general you probably aren't, unless you're in like a very specific circumstance, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's any real I struggle to see that the appeal for having them separate. Honestly, it doesn't even affect most of us players. Most of the people that it affects is literally going to be people that have like 52 prayer and 1 defense, or like 30 defense or something like that.
Right.
And it's like, and this is a big problem I have with like the voting system, is that a lot of people have this kind of like this idea like, oh, it changes the integrity of the game and things like that. It's like, not really in terms of old schoolness. It's like the most minute thing. Oh no, like my prayer book's gonna look weird, so you can literally reorder it. Like,
that's part of an ongoing MMO. Like, the game, if we don't introduce new stuff like that, the game will gradually die.
Yeah,
I mean, that's natural. Like, if you don't release new content, people don't, like, you'll have people playing it for nostalgia, and then they're gonna stop because, well, they've done everything they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's the same thing too with, like, I guess this branches into another whole subject, is like, from a HD client perspective, adding in the ability to give updated graphics. I'm a huge advocate for this. I think, though, that they need to build it in a way that's like Minecraft, where it's shaders you can install or things like that. It's not forced upon everyone, because then people can get whatever side they want, and it helps make the game a little more appealing for people that didn't grow up with this nostalgia of old school RuneScape.
Yeah, for sure. I like the artwork that they have for this kind of like newer version of old school. Like, it's still a very old school nice artwork, but it's kind of got that nice polish to it. Like, that's a very nice, and I could just, I mean, have you seen this thick boy? You can't see it, but you know, I'm at Redwood, so but yeah, I kind of see the appeal when it comes to HDOS. I think and I think fair play to a lot of people like yourself who play, you know, on HDOS and those kind of like, you know, clients that make the graphics look nicer or even different, more modernized. I don't really see there being a problem, even with how you said like, oh, if we could have shaders instead that kind of come from like the native game rather than through a client and things like that. Yeah, fair play. Like, I don't really see there being much of a problem because realistically, that's just how you want to play. It doesn't change the integrity of the game itself. When it comes to the prayers, though, I do understand that, like, you know, when I look at this prayer book, like, there is a lot of memories even just looking at this prayer book thinking I'm never going to reach fucking piety, you know, all these years ago when King's Ransom was like the best quest for best prayers prior to Temple's Cenestein and all that quest line down for the Marjarat for the curses and stuff like that.
Awesome quest line.
I mean,
Awesome.
yeah, I'm such a big advocate for the idea of them bringing in the whole Marjarat slash, you know, expanding on the Mauritania storyline, and you know that I think we can definitely go down that line because I want to talk about the god alignments at some point in this as well. But, you know, and I think it's actually a good point for us to follow on after this conversation about the prayers. But, you know, the fact that, you know, a lot of people are voting no against a poll. Yeah, indeed. We have gone everywhere. I mean, it's record. Because
I was going to say, we started this conversation honed in on Mage Training Arena, and now we're...
Oh, we are going places. I mean, it's recording my screen as well, so I've actually got So, but yeah, like we've got like the prayers up. You know, this is the thing. Like you've got these polls. We've got these polls coming in for various different types of accounts. These pures. You know, skillers, all these kind of things, you know, and we can go into more detail about, you know, the skilling poll that happened as well. You know, some of these things apply to us. The skilling one, for instance, me and you know, we do a lot of skilling. You're on your road to max and you're almost there. I am maxed. I'm maxing on the process of it, you know, things like that. That pertains to us. If I wanted to vote for, say, the new DK's tunnel that they're proposing, I'm going to vote yes because I enjoy going to DK's and I hate the run. Does it destroy the nostalgia of running through DK's? Excuse me, running through DK's? Yes, it does. Do I care?
It's miserable.
Yeah, it's miserable. Why do I have to take a rock, a rune thrown axe, and a stamina with me just to make it through there, or use the max stamina boost that I get once per day? I don't want to do that. Like, I could just use a shortcut.
All to charge for a boss that, for the most case, a lot of people are just doing now for pet hunting.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. And it just, it does frustrate me that people are voting no on things that doesn't really pertain to them. Like, if I won't vote on PKing stuff, for instance, it's not my place. That's just my personal preference. I don't really vote that often anyway, but if there's something I do want to vote on, I will vote on it. But I don't vote on PKing stuff. It's not my place to say. I do not PK in the slight. I've never touched an LMS game in my life, apart from maybe my Iron for like 2 games, and I got frustrated and left.
I did that for my Ruin Pouch, and that was the longest grind I've probably done on my GIM I've ever done.
Yeah, it just doesn't pertain to us. I don't think it's really something that, you know, we really have a lack of a better term, like a professional perspective on. There's lots of people.
Like a real say in it.
Yeah. But yet people feel like they have the, like, because there's the grand majority who are like, no, like don't nerf the Void Waker. It's like, well, actually they're nerfing it for PvP for the most part, not for PvM. That's my understanding of it anyway. I might be wrong, but even then, I'm not even that opposed to the idea that the Void Waker does get nerfed, because the idea that, from a PvM perspective, I don't like the idea that one weapon fits all. This is so stupid. Like, one spec weapon fits all. That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I definitely learned a valuable lesson though with the Void Waker. It's not good in Tob. It's not good in Chambers, at least. But I mean, in general, it is a one weapon fits all situation. Outside of that, like TOB, I've definitely learned a valuable lesson with that. That when they say it's a mage special, it's a mage special. I nuked myself once at Nilo's because I specced in the melee phase.
Yeah. Um, that's just my perspective on it. I just don't like the idea that, like, you know, this one spec weapon fits all. When it comes to PvP, I have no say in it. Like, I will leave that down to the PvPers to say Void Waker should be or shouldn't be, you know, nerfed or whatever. Uh, you know,
um, the other thing too that I think has been interesting, at least from a special attack weapon that I've been starting to see kind of come out of the woodwork, is seeing. So I don't know how much you watch Bodhi's stream. He usually tries to run like 4 or 5 TOAs the first thing in his stream,
yeah,
and he brings a bone dagger and a circle bow on his TOA runs.
that's yeah. I did watch him the other day doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the bone dagger used to only be thought of as a cheap alternative to a BGS, like a low level Iron Man alternative to a BGS.
Yeah.
And TOA introduced essentially a new use for it,
Mm-hmm.
and a realistic use where, like, when I run my solo 440s, I bring a bone dagger now.
Interesting.
It's just because it's a guaranteed hit.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's actually
the ones you use.
yeah. But this is the thing, like that kind of gameplay is just it's crazy. You've got like a 15-year-old weapon that's designed for, like, you know, not very sorry, I had to put my back pin in. Not very, you know, I've lost my train of thought now.
Oh. No, that was one thing. Is it the barrel chest anchor, the special attack there drains prayer? Or is it
yes?
just the ancient maze?
I can't remember actually. I don't remember off the top of my head. I
was gonna say, I'd be curious if you see it for like Muspa introducing the mechanics around like it having a prayer that you have to drain with smite.
Yeah, this is oh yeah, no, the mace drains prayer. Yeah, because that's how you get Muspa down with one of the combat achievements. I remember. Yeah, that's one of the.
But I think that's a cool addition, in my opinion. Is like you gotta learn how to smite the boss. Like I kind of wish DT2 would have either added a replayability or a boss that was like the stranger, the one that changes prayer on you, changes combat styles, like super cool mechanics, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'm. That's the thing. I like having like variation, and I think PKers would agree too. Like they would like to see variation when it comes to their PKing, because that's ultimately what they like to see as well. You know, their ability to be able to swap and change the different setups and stuff. That's why so many of them have a pure setup. They have a you know, maybe a Zerker or something like that.
Right.
And it's, yeah, I think just, again, it kind of comes to that point I'm saying earlier. Like, I just don't think that we're really in a position where we can really make any comments about, or be voting for areas that we're not particularly versed in. You know, like that's just the way it is, really.
Give me a quick second here. I just got to run to the bathroom.
No worries.
All right, I'm back.
Welcome back. Yeah,
I 100% was trying not to shit myself for like the last 20 minutes.
That's fine. That's fine. Should have just messaged. I'm just gonna cut everything Um, that where we've done a pause essentially. So,
Yeah, no worries.
I'll. Are you ready to start back up?
Yeah. Well, so why don't we do this? Let's go for another. 'Cause- Let's see here. What's everyone else?
It's on a one. It's done an hour and 12 so far. It's still
Okay.
going, but I could just cut it.
Yeah, we can probably keep going here for a bit and then
Yeah,
figure it out.
I think yeah, we'll just keep going until we feel like you can just message me when you're like, yeah, I've had enough. All right, I'm gonna say 113. So we'll wait for it to. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, so we were obviously talking about kind of the prayers, which I guess actually fits pretty well for us in terms of the next bit, which is the god alignments.
Yeah, I personally I like the concept of the God Alliance, like, but I think they need to do it right.
Yeah.
Like yesterday, you and I were kind of bouncing ideas back and forth off of like how we could see them building that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think the hard part is kind of keeping all the God books, like all the alliances relevant.
Yeah.
And part of me is like they need to do it, but part of me is like, but is that realistic? You know what I mean? Like there's what, 7 gods technically that they have to try to work with.
I think they're only working on 6 though, aren't they? They're not including technically Seren, isn't it?
No, Saren's in because Saren was originally going to be released with the first iteration. Because the first iteration they were going to add in Zeros, Guthix, and Saren. Because Saren they were going to do it through Song of the Elves, like it'd be a retro availability through Song of the Elves.
Ah, I did not know that. I thought it was just an idea that popped in your head.
Oh no, they like that's part of the reason why I was actually kind of recognizing it as a god. I guess it'd be interesting kind of how they are able to go at that from a lore perspective because I mean even Zeros is technically above Zami, Sarah, like Zamorak was a follower of Zeros and betrayed him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Saren is just literally supposed to be the opposite of Zeros.
Yeah. She OP. Yeah, no. I'm all for the idea of the alignments. I think going off the fact that what we said yesterday, I think my biggest concern is just making sure that they just don't become irrelevant like in any capacity, even if like I would rather alignments be used for specific pieces of content, like Guthix is for skilling and Zami is for certain pieces of content and so on and so forth, than for them to like one to just be completely like irrelevant from the entire thing and one of them to just be used over everything else. Like that's just my biggest concern. I'd rather see that the spell book has like, or not the spell book, the prayer book has like 6 prayers but can be utilized in so many different ways. Or sorry, that all of the alignments can be used in different ways rather than just 2 or 3 alignments out of the 7 that just get used in the same pieces of content on rotation, and just kind of the other 4 or 5 or maybe even 6 get just shunted to the side.
Well, what's your thoughts on this? So I was just thinking about this. Instead of introducing the new prayers through like the Wild Gothic Sleeps and other Grandmaster quests, I think that's a good opportunity to dive into a God Wars 2.
I would love to see a God Wars 2, honestly.
Like I think this is honestly if they're going to do a God alignment prayers, I feel like that's the most appropriate spot for it in my opinion. Like you're getting KC for a certain boss. Like I don't know. I feel like you'd maybe do it in a fashion that's similar to maybe how because RS3 did do a God Wars 3 and or God Wars 2, and I like the way that they actually did it
Sure.
because they did it where your KC wasn't wiped when you left, and there was also the bounty system. So you would talk to followers of each of the gods, and they would send you on a mission to essentially go slaughter monsters of the other gods to show your loyalty to the god.
Actually, do you know what? That's not the worst sounding idea I've like that's actually kind of interesting. Because I mean, does it get it rings not alarm bells, but it just rings bells about reputation for Modern Warcraft. But at the same time, I wasn't like the worst thing to do for me anyway. But I kind of like that idea. I think they do have room to expand into this whole like God Wars 2. And I think that would help with the alignments in a lot of ways. I mean, it covers 5 of the 7 bases. The only
Well, you could even do wider than that too.
what was the only one? I think while Guthix sleeps, obviously would handle the Guthix alignment. You got the other 5, Armor, Bando, Sara, Zami, and Zaros, because you've got Nex and all that. So it makes sense that maybe they could be handled that way, or partially through that way. Even if you could even see it as like building up towards it. So like it might not be that like you can unlock the Zaros alignment through just Nexing, because let's be honest, Nex isn't exactly the most thrilling boss for a lot of people. It just makes a lot of money, right? But it could be that you are required to do certain things within the next room, or there's certain things that have to be done in that area or whatever. But it does open an interesting door, that idea, and I'm not closing that idea off, to be honest. That is a good idea, at least from my perspective. I'd be interested to see it. My only
Well,
sorry,
I think though I feel like though they can't just, I feel like maybe for God Wars 2, like I'm bouncing back and forth here on that. I don't know if you could do the exact same gods
yeah,
like do, just because I feel like then it's like, how are you gonna, so General Grador is the big war god, like it's the head chief under the big war god, right? So what's gonna be the boss for God Wars 2? Actual Grador? Like,
yeah.
I mean, sorry, like actual Bandos?
Yeah, I think if they're gonna do that, it needs to be like the idea of it being like the God Wars 2 would have to be way more intense. Like it almost have to be like like a demi raid, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because that's that's not a light bot, like from a lore perspective. If someone was to give a shit about the lore, right? Which to some degree it does need to make sense. Like you can't just shunt something ridiculous into the game, right? So from a lore perspective, if you're going to be fighting, you know, Bandos himself, like yeah, I would like to think that the fight is going to be, intense in some perspective. So I wouldn't want to just be given just like this easy fight to deal with. Like I want something meaty to put my teeth into, so that.
What about making God? So I know we're kind of semi-diverting here, but what about making the God Wars 2 actually be the Elder Gods?
I don't know too much about the Elder Gods, but again, if it makes sense from a lore perspective, and the rewards and all that makes sense, and then it create that again. For me, it's mostly to do with like mechanics and stuff, but again, I'm not closed off to that idea of that being like the play. For me,
Because I guess like what they can dive into then is like kind of giving also the origins of like Third Age. Because remember, like the Third Age like range armor is based on a Third Age hide, which we have no idea what that's around, right?
yeah. I mean,
And I think that could add in some interesting content, and then also like I mean, that I don't have a full understanding of the elder gods, but like I know that like Saren's elder god, Zeros is an elder god. That's two that we've been introduced to already.
Mm.
And I know that there's like a beast one that is also an elder god.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think I know something about it, but I've heard something about it, but I can't remember where or what it was that it was entailed to. I think it was something around I think it's something to do with like Sotoseg, ironically, from like the Dark Realm or something like that. I think.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's
That's the beast one that I'm referring. Like the beast one looks exactly like Sodi.
Yeah,
So
it's ironic. I've got Sotoseg following me around still right now. um, but yeah, I think it's definitely interesting. One of two things that I would like to see if that was the case is that it's either just one gigantic raid, um, that you know allows and that's like kind of separated into three parts, kind of deal, or they're just three separate kind of like demi raids almost, that all pertain to like the three elder gods or something like that. Because again, like if especially if it's elder gods, like you're going beyond just the regular gods, you're going to the elder god section. Like I would like to think that it's going to be like an intense fight, lorically speaking, if that's even a word. um
well,
as
so this kind of branches into another like idea that just popped into my head is like introduce kind of combining the two concepts together. So what would be your thoughts around doing a so the next raid is quote unquote God Wars 2. It's called God Wars 2, but it's actually a raid where essentially you talk to the follower and the follower sends you to slay the other gods. So that's where the three different demi bosses and getting to the final boss.
I think it kind of rings. You just have to be careful that like if you were to pitch an idea like that, the first thing that came into my head is kind of like it's just Slayer, but just maybe like on a more like linear path. Yeah, do you want to go into a bit more depth about what that entails?
Yeah, well, so that was the idea there is like maybe you'd set it up in like a rotation system, but essentially you would talk to a follower of a certain god in the God Wars, and they will give you essentially the raid to run, in which is taking out the other types of gods as demigod, like demi bosses.
Okay. Yeah.
Because then it kind of branches into more of a then it allows a little bit of a rotation around it, and it kind of aligns more of like you're not going around killing your own, like you're not killing Zeros minions for Zeros favor to get the Zeros spell. Like I feel like that might be a little backwards. Like I think it's you gotta be doing something to show that you deserve to have the Zeros prayer. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Honestly, actually, come to think about it, it's actually not a bad idea. I think that would actually be a fairly decent idea. Obviously, you'd have to be careful not to enter into the realms of making
Like
it feel like
reputation.
Slayer and reputation as well. Yeah, like it's just yeah, you just have to be careful that you're not combining it with things that either already exist or are things that have been notoriously known for just not being the most fun content. But if it's that, hence why I think if you have it more set towards a more of like a raid style, you could have reputation built into the whole system, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea. It's more just the case of the main hub of the idea being like, especially like I said earlier, like it's more raid orientated, or just like more it doesn't even necessarily have to be all
I guess what I'm looking at too with that idea is kind of taking a little bit of inspiration of what has been done already. Because I think that if you move past EOC for RS3, there is a lot of stuff in RS3 that provides a lot of potential.
Hmm.
And so, like, you've got the God Wars 2 system that's in place there, which is pretty good for the most case. But also, you look at like Araxor, for example.
Sure.
Araxor is a pretty well designed boss, in my opinion. Um, and I do like that actually it's on a day rotation. So if I do the boss today and I do the boss tomorrow, I don't get the same experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
And
Oh, sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say, and that makes it does make it harder to complete an item if it requires the different types. But I still think it keeps that content fresh longer.
Yeah, I agree. That style is something that I don't think really has been explored in the old school setting, and I think it would definitely help. Because let's be honest, like us as oh, sorry, I'm trying to do Duke at the same time, and
You good?
I might have just BGS swung instead of actually spec'd it. Lol. Um, but I've lost my track of thought again. God damn it.
Oh, around
Oh, that's it.
no,
Araxor. So like this idea of yeah, like having you know, pieces of content that don't necessarily kind of like do you remember in Destiny 1 you had Zur, I don't know how you pronounce his name, but the guy where you could buy the exotic weapons from. What?
oh yeah, Zur
Yeah.
XUR like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And you could go to him and you could you know, there were different missions, there were different strikes and things like that that, you know, had different challenges and stuff like that for that week. That concept for RuneScape players, I think, is something that hasn't really been explored and is something that should. I'm curious to know what other people would think of that kind of concept, because I think it stops certain pieces of content from getting really dry really quickly, because I think that's something that kind of happens quite often in our realm of video
No,
games.
definitely. I think the other thing though is that they do have to be a little bit careful on that front
Mm.
because I know that one very negative view set on I will say Destiny and also on RuneScape 3 is daily scape.
Oh god,
You
yeah.
got to you got to get on to do your daily things to get your daily rewards and um I know there's a huge emphasis to stay away from that. And I guess maybe that part of that too is like if they did like a Raxor style boss,
Mm.
maybe it's that it rotates through the different phases every hour.
Yeah. Oh, that's not too bad actually. Yeah. I think it might be a bit stressful
System
on
like on the servers.
yeah, but I think the general idea might not be a bad idea. That's actually an interesting thought actually, because again, I'm kind of pinching a lot of ideas off of World of Warcraft here, but there's they do things like world bosses. So it's like bosses that just like spawn every now and then like throughout the world that people
Mm-hmm.
can like, you know,
Go
jump
group
on.
up and
It's kind
kill.
of like imagine like shooting stars, but it's a boss that you fight.
Kind of like what they did in Dead Man mode Reborn, where it just randomly
Yes.
would spawn them in a zone.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and a lot of them like it's a bit of a throwback here, but there's a what do you call it? There's a like a number of the world bosses that had what do you call it? They had things like pets and that, and like fairly high end gear that could also pertain to it that people used to do. Like people used to farm that for pets and well for mounts. Mounts was like the pet equivalent in World of Warcraft,
Yeah.
I would say. But it's still, I would say, you know, the concept of having that. Because also then, if you've got that many players all like, you know, chiming in and it's just absolute chaos, not only are you kind of opening the doors to the social side of RuneScape, but um, you're also allowing, you know, smaller, not smaller. What smaller is a bad word to use. Less experienced players. That's the word I was looking for.
Experience harder content.
Yeah, exactly. Because you could have it set up so that it scales with the number of players that are available, um, or rather the lack thereof of players. So it becomes so there's still the challenge of, you know,
Like if 300 people show up, then the boss is going to be super easy. But if only 10 show up, it's going to be it's doable, but it's going to be a struggle.
yeah. Um, but then again, what difference is there that of that example then against something like say Nex? Because technically you could say that Nex is a
Yeah.
world boss in the capacity that most people can access it. So that yeah, I suppose that argument could swing both ways, but like you know, I think there's just a lot of room for people, like a lot of like very easily introducible ideas that just haven't either I feel haven't been explored or even really talked about. Um, but going back on your elder gods idea, that I think has a lot of potential because of the fact that it fits with the lore.
Hmm.
But also, and it also doesn't like even though while um, RuneScape 3 has done something of that similar nature, we could still probably like deviate somewhat away from it without basically outright copying it.
Oh,
Um,
for sure. I think there's plenty like it's more of looking at the generalized idea because like you even look at diving into I'm trying to think of a quest. Oh, Sins of the Father.
yeah,
Sins of the Father is not a perfect carbon. It's a quest that exists also on RS3. There's still somewhat of the similar story, but they did stray from the lore.
sure,
Like they did, I should say, they strayed from the lore that was RS3 on that.
yeah,
It's not it's not a carbon copy on the whole story, and they'll be doing that. I think they said they're going to probably be doing that with While Gothic Sleeps too.
yeah, yeah,
So I think there is subtle changes that they could do. I don't know. I guess this is another god that I didn't think about until now. Um, the one that's over the desert that TOA is relating to,
oh yeah, that's
because that
true.
is another god.
Is she not? Oh no, she's not a Marjarat, is she? No, she's
Nope.
something completely different, isn't she?
I haven't looked into her lore. Maybe she's on that same tier as the Elder Gods. I don't know.
Yeah,
If she is, then that kind of it builds in a more potential of a quote unquote Elder Gods God Wars 3. Because now you've got now we for sure got three Elder Gods, right?
mm-hmm.
You got Saren, you've got Zeros, you've got if this Tombs of a Masked person is an Elder God too, then you got them too.
Yeah, yeah,
And I don't think it'll be that difficult to quote unquote find a fourth Elder God.
no,
There probably is one that already exists and we just can't think of it, and it's probably been hinted at. Maybe there's an Elder God over the Eastern lands.
this is true. Yeah, and that's another area that hasn't really been explored in recent times. Like the last update we got or hint of the Eastern lands was pretty much Fasanis.
Yeah,
Um,
I I would hope with sailing they'll introduce more of that.
I would like to hope so, but again, they you never really know with these kind of things.
Right.
So it's hard to say whether or not something like that is actually going to be happening or not. But I'd like to think that with sailing they'll explore some decent ideas. Um, yeah, it's really hard to say. Um,
I think it'll be interesting if they do dive into more of like Zeros' story and the
mm,
Margerod essentially, because
mm,
uh, then you get a little more like there's a lot of content in RS3 that's like solo or less than 3 man. Like you cannot
mm.
invite more than 3 people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, go.
I some of that content is valuable. Some of it, I think, you still should open it up to a larger door, like and
Mm,
allow massing.
yeah. I think if they're gonna have masses though, I feel like it needs to. I think the best thing that can happen in these instances, because obviously there are people who prefer the challenge because they find that the less players there are, the more challenging it gets.
Hmm.
If it can actually, rather than become quicker and easier, it actually scales properly and actually still remains just as difficult if it was solo. Obviously, there are some mechanics that might make it so that it's a little bit more doable than in previous cases. Like for instance, an example would be the green ball from Tob. Like obviously,
Yeah,
if you're gonna bounce it, then that just requires communication. Otherwise, it could like one hit you. Um, but
I guess that kind of dives into another aspect too, where I believe that if they're gonna release a boss that is a group content, it should not be soloable, flat out. I
um,
think that the reason why I say that is just because uh, an MMO, if they are going to introduce a boss content, I would much prefer if they kept it to where you have to do it with other people.
mm,
Because, like, I mean, the only realistic piece of content right now that is not soloable at all, and I say realistic because I know it's been done, is TOB solo.
yeah,
Everything else is soloable.
sure,
And I think that there's something missing with that.
mm,
Like I having a content like TOB, you find people that do it. Sure, it's a pretty elite community that you run into with that, but um, it's still a community.
yeah,
There, you don't really hear of a Vardorvis community like.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think because of the fact that, well, I think that that's because the fact that it is something that's not originally supposed to be soloable, but is soloable, is why there's such a following behind it. Because it's such a it's kind of like that. Like I can do this group content that has predominantly been known to not be soloable, and I have gone and soloed it. Whereas there's like other pieces of content like I mean, even chambers, realistically speaking, if you actually like break it down without the method of like actually like running the head and everything, actually, it's not. I mean, you can solo it. It's not impossible to solo it, especially with nowadays gear like Blood Fury, Sang,
I
Shadow.
was gonna I was gonna say, as someone that's actively learning how to do solo chambers now, um, I could tell you the method, especially with Shadow, Scythe, you you don't have to effectively run remotely. You
Yeah,
just got to make sure you semi negate the teleport damage, and you'll get the KC without dying.
which is kind of crazy to think that a piece of content like Chambers, which came out, bloody hell, came out in what 17,
2018.
2017.
Yeah,
That's crazy. And to think that that piece of content is pretty much just like if you tried to solo it back when it first like kind of started or whatever, like that would have been like you knew what you were doing. Now it's just like how rich can I get so I can just sit there and just AFK it,
right.
you know? but at the same time, you know, and it is to be expected. It's power creep. That's just how it
It's
runs.
natural.
Yeah,
Like if that didn't exist, then Bandos would still be the hardest boss we have in the game.
yeah, yeah. No, for sure. Um, I think I kind of feel you on the whole um aspect of like trying to not cater to this idea of having just purely soloable content. Um, I think there's a difference between pure solo content and um, content that is designed to be grouped but can be soloed, because I think part of what makes the group, like, Tob does it really well, in my opinion. It's because Tob is just notoriously difficult as is, even when you're first learning how to do it as a group. But then if you get less and less players, it becomes
Marginally
even,
harder.
yeah, like it's noticeable. It's not like, again, it's not like Chambers, because Chambers, it was pretty much like we've found that 3 mans, 5 mans were, you know, kind of like the go-tos. 7 mans, you know, have these insane
Right.
speeds behind it. um I don't know, I think Tob just did everything perfectly. You know, it's pure
I,
combat, which is what everyone wants. It doesn't take half a century to do. Um,
well, I guess I'm under the impression that if it's, I should say this, if it's a regular boss, I'd say it has a soloable option, but if it's a raid, it should be borderline impossible to do solo.
yeah,
Like, because like you look at other games, how many other games have raids that you can do solo?
yeah. I mean, I suppose like from a newer perspective, like I'm thinking like, you know, World of Warcraft, like you can pretty much solo like the older pieces of content, which is pretty much for like transmogs and stuff, but it's not for like current gear. Like the current gear is
Mm.
basically just dog shit. You pretty much only go there for mounts and transmogs, um, which I think is, you know, fine if like that
It's
piece
a
of
good way
content.
to revitalize that content and
Yeah,
keep it alive.
yeah, for sure. But if you're doing something like, yeah, if it's like up to date content and it's like, oh yeah, it's designed for like, you know, average, let's say 7 players, and you know, you've got people going in there with like 2 mil gear soloing it. I think there's a fundamental problem there.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and like it just it um people like let's just use leagues as an example here. When everyone got super excited with leagues and was running it together, that's when you had the game going strong. You had the highest player counts and everything. Those player counts was partially because everyone was feeding off the energy off of each other.
yeah,
As soon as people started dropping off, then borderline everyone dropped like flies in leagues.
yeah, 100%. I think I think that was actually some of the most fun I had, was doing like those really cracked Tob runs, like the Tob duos.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think again, like in some cases, I think there's two things there's two sides to the coin in this instance, right? I think one is like having pieces of content which um, have depth and are highly mechanical, but not so highly mechanical that it, like, you know, fries your brain, of course. But it's engaging. It's engaging content. Um, the other thing as well is just making sure that it, you know, when you have certain player bases, like it should be scalable. Like you should be able to say like, right, if I want to go into this piece of content and it is for advise that I have like 8 players as an example, but I want to go and duo it, it should scale to that. So it should still be just as difficult as if I had 8 players, but it scales in the aspect of like, you know, there's only 2 players.
Well, what do you think about if they did similar to what they did with Nightmare? Because Nightmare, for example, uh, I mean, it scales up to 20 people if I remember correctly. I would go above that, but like it's scaled. If you're below 5, it just gets it marginally harder because it doesn't. The boss does not scale lower than what you would get if you were running a 5-man.
That to me makes sense. Like it scales. The only thing I'm trying to think of, right, like, is I'm trying to because half my mind is in this boat of where like, yeah, I want what I've just described, but I'm also scared that like it's gonna be like next, where if I do it, it's just a brew simulator. I suppose belongs it's not a brew simulator, it'd be fine. Because if you do everything mechanically correct, then you reduce the damage as much as like, well, extremely well, right? Like,
Right.
if let's say for instance, we were duoing Tob, you know, it's like notoriously, you know, not more difficult than solo, obviously, but it's still notoriously difficult. Especially if you're like learning, like kind of both of you are learning and you're not like picking it up. It might be different if you've got someone who already knows what they're doing, but you know, if you do everything mechanically correctly, you know, you're praying the right things, etc., etc., then, you know, DPS is kept to its highest, provided RNG doesn't screw you over, and you don't take too much damage. Whereas in Nex, it's pretty much like no matter what, well, and up until a certain size of their group. But like if you go into like a trio, for instance, right? Even with the meleeing phase 2 and, you know, being primarily like melee throughout the majority of the fight, you still go through like 6 brews maybe in a 3-man, 6-7 brews, and like 3 restores. And that's like averaging, of course, depending on how good everyone is at doing those different things. So it's like, belongs it's not like that, because I think that's what they fucked up on with Nex. Like, obviously, like we were saying earlier, it got backported, right? So I have a feeling like the backporting might have something to do with it, maybe. But in general, the way that they should be creating these bosses is not a fucking brew simulator. It should not be click yellow simulator.
Right. Yeah, where you're just sitting there hammering through all of your supplies for no apparent reason.
Yeah, exactly. Because then that's what makes Nex a shit boss. If Nex was like, you know, mechanically inclined, like, you know, engaging, then I would say that Nex wouldn't be that bad of a boss actually. But
Well, I mean, Nightmare was designed to be old school's Nex partially.
yeah,
So I mean, I think that's where I think the reason why you and I kind of do enjoy Nightmare on it. I wish regular Nightmare they kind of did a little bit like they did in Fasani's, where chip damage wasn't really so much of a factor.
yeah. I think the chip damage was fairly negligible. Oh my god, I'm having a speech impediment. You don't really feel it, like, and I think that's partially back then due to the fact that, you know, you had blood. Well, you still do, but the main go-to was Sang / Harmonized Orb plus, you know, Blood Fury. It was like you could just sit there and heal back everything through your hits rather than actually using like brews and stuff, if everyone did everything correctly, right?
Right.
So
Yeah, like it's. Oh god.
it's like, again, chip damage is just one of those really lazy mechanics. I feel like it's not a very good mechanic. Between just high it's like with invocation system on TOA, like there's some more interesting ones that I don't mind, outside of course our most beloved mechanic come phase.
buddy shot phase.
Yeah, it's fucking bullshit. But
I mean, it's I do appreciate the concept of it.
yeah,
I just feel like it's with the fact that we're running a tick-based game, it's a little bullshit because like
yeah,
even if you're spot on your reactions, you can get obliterated out of nowhere.
yeah, yeah,
And I
100%.
guess that's where my issue comes around is like I would say maybe they would if they wanted to make enraged Akka phase more enjoyable overall. I feel like what it would be is like increasing the delay before the next ball can hit you after you got hit. I
Yeah,
think if they did that alone, enraged Akka phase would be about 20 times better because you don't have instances where like you get hit by one, you try to backstep thinking no one's going to hit there. Also, you get smoked by another one immediately, and then you get smoked by another one immediately, and you're dead. You're
yeah,
like, well, this was fun.
yeah. Whole run's just ruined because it's happened to all four of you simultaneously.
Right. Like if I still think that there needs to be somewhat of a aspect of it that there is risk. Like it's not like, okay, I'll tank one right away off the bat and then just go sprint at Akka
Mm-hmm.
and keep attacking and like and it'll pull through my blood fury will pull through. I think that there needs to be kind of a better balance on how much time because there is a timer. I don't know what it is. There is a timer between when you get hit and when you can get hit by another.
Yeah,
Like you can't instantaneously get smoked by two the same tick.
I'm pretty sure it's like maybe 2 tick difference, but that's going off the top of my head. I haven't been there for a while. So,
Right. Like I would say even if they increased it by one more tick, I think that would make it more bearable.
yeah. Um, yeah, no, I agree. I think the other thing as well, though, is like the general. So, like, you remember how we were going for like our 500 kits, right? And it's like the half the invocations you end up turning on are invocations which um just end up increasing the damage output, the defense, and the HP. It's like you're not actually making it any more mechanically difficult. You're just making it a pain in the ass at this point.
Right.
And while I understand, like, well, it's designed for more like it's like the beginner's raid of the big like big three raids that we've got going on. But like, come on, like if you're gonna put like all these like cosmetic based things in and it's gonna be a guarantee, at least make it like mechanically challenging. Don't just be like, okay, well, we can kind of make it challenging, but after that we kind of gave up, so we're just going to make it so that it increases health, defense, and it can like hit 50s or some shit. Like that's fucking pointless, man. Like,
Well, and I guess the other aspect too on that front that like I think it should be a quote unquote intended mechanics too.
sure.
Like what I mean by that too is like looking at Z-Back in the very beginning before they put the boulder blocks on the side, you used to be able to stand there and Z-Back would constantly chomp at you but could never bite you.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
that was one that they patched, which I think was a good patch, but like Butterfly Akka or Red Xing Baba, those unintended mechanics like though I think those unintended mechanics just try to make what you were just talking about more bearable because like you
Mm.
can red X Baba and you only get hit once per Baba like Baba phase.
Yeah.
And like Akka, if you butterfly really well, uh potentially you could never get hit the entire run.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Otherwise, then it's kind of lightly dealing with like RNG because I think it's like a 30% chance of him changing combat styles if he hits you or if he specials.
Yeah. But then I kind of argue like shouldn't while I get that there's all these different aspects to the game already coexisting in, you know, in the game. Like, I feel like I feel like it's kind of just cheesing it. Like, okay, yeah, we found red Xing through like God Wars Dungeon and stuff. I think that's when red Xing really made its first kind of appearance, was
Right.
through red Xing. Was in God Wars, sorry. But to allow, like, knowing that these different kind of methods are available now in the game, I feel like Jagex has a responsibility to test to make sure that those kind of things don't end up being possible, or at least are as as tested thoroughly as possible to negate this as much as possible, because ultimately the sense of achievement you get from basically choosing two out of the 4 bosses in a raid just seems a little bit.
You know, I wonder if Butterfly and Akka actually wasn't intended.
Yeah, I don't think it was.
Well, I'm on the fence, because what other bosses in the game delay their attack 1 tick once they become they get in range? Like,
Well,
that's the one thing that still puts me on the edge of it, like, where I'm like, was it unintended completely there?
yeah, I know Musper's like that, because
Right.
that's how you do, like, and that's like essentially like Musper and what's his face, Arca share the same like mechanic with the walk back, at least. Walk back and Musper share that same concept,
Right.
essentially.
And that's what's making me kind of lead to believe that this was a new mechanic that was found. It was like, okay, we know this mechanic exists, and we know that this boss can obliterate. Like, if you're running a 600, this boss will obliterate you.
Yeah.
If you don't, like, there's got to be a way to make it where someone's very skilled can do it.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that there's a potential that they're like, okay, what can we do here? Well, we do have instances of players doing this weird step back method at Muspa. Oh, well, there's our chance. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
because like the Red X scene, I think they did the Shadow Strike to try to semi counter Red X scene.
Yeah, I think I could agree with that. Not that it worked very well, but
well, but I think it made it a little more skill based.
Yeah,
because like you have to know the timing.
True.
Like you have to sit back. Like it's just like learning how to scythe walk at Zarpus, right?
Yeah.
You need to know that timing, otherwise you can just fuck it up and die, or ruin the whole map for your whole team. Well, that's the same with Baba too. Like if you walk 3 tiles under every single time, you're just gonna get deleted.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that. I think it's just I don't know. I think maybe it's because I'm coming from like someone who is exposed to those methods very quickly on. I feel like, I mean, I will admit, like, I didn't use red Xing for... I knew about red Xing Bubba, but I never used red Xing for Bubba. Not because I didn't want to. I just couldn't be asked to learn it. It's just laziness on my own part, really. But, which definitely, I think, made it a little bit more challenging, but...
But then it kind of turned into a brew simulator, like you were saying earlier.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. It's like now I have to be a bit more mindful about how I use my what you call it, my restores and stuff, because obviously I think back then it was you used what was it? You used like overly draining and stuff like that. That was like the go-to before like people started like knowing what was more the, like the meta per se.
Right.
So for me, it was very much like I just couldn't be asked to learn it, and I just thought, fuck, like bugger it, I'm just gonna go see what happens, and I just happened to, get the hang of dealing with Bubba in a fairly intense situation like that. But ultimately, yeah, did it make it? Did it really do anything? No. But again, it kind of proves my point though. Like, you could have made it more mechanically interesting to the point where I didn't have to. Again, it was a bit of a proof simulator, but not as bad as next. But it still would have been bad, if regardless of
When
regardless.
you look at like just in general how much people are evolving the game. I mean, you look at Nex. If you took the point that Nex came from, people were not duoing Nex. Like the fact that the follow method at Nex.
Yeah, that took a couple weeks, didn't it?
Yeah, like that wasn't something people found out. People found out about the step under method right away, but that wasn't really flawless.
No.
You still ran the risk of getting smoked in the process, and especially on a duo perspective, if you relied purely on that method, it was probably a 40% chance you'd get the KC.
Yeah.
Especially when it came to the lawnmower P2 phase. Like,
I do love a good lawnmower.
Because like the P2 phase, literally, like, I feel like that was maybe in place to like kind of destroy people from thinking it's gonna be an easy thing. Because like when that was probably designed, they didn't really know about, like, they didn't know that people would quote unquote abuse the fact that if you stand under Nex teleports away.
Yeah. Well, I think that must have been designed to some capacity, because you wouldn't put the coding in to say teleport if no player can be hit for a period of time. But there's still.
Well, I think that's like, I think though, because of it already existing in the code, they kept it. Because like, I'm gonna use use Nightmare as an example.
Sure.
Nightmare, if you stand underneath Nightmare, what does she do? She still attacks you.
Yeah.
And she still can hit you. So I couldn't believe that they wouldn't have that available when they did the backport. Like, I mean, I know it was available. Nightmare was already out when Nex was out.
Yeah. Wait, was it? I thought Nightmare came first, then Nex.
Nope. Well, yeah, sorry. Yeah, Nightmare came first, then Nex, but Nex already existed in RS3 or RS2 at the time.
Oh, I see what you mean, yeah.
So, like, because of them backporting the code, they just kept a lot of it as is and just made sure it was functioning because they knew that's what the players wanted. They wanted the Nex experience that they remember from way back when.
Yeah.
And that was part of the code there. Like, if you look at Nex now in old school, it's a carbon copy of RS3. There is not a single mechanic that's different.
Yeah.
It just comes down to how you try to bypass it that's different between the two.
Yeah. Especially because it's just the general mechanics and, like, the way that the games, like, play out and stuff now. I think it's also different because they had summoning at that point as well. Like, at the height of Nex, they had summoning,
right.
didn't they? So it's kind of like, the metas are slightly different as well. I think soloing Nex was a lot more popular than
it was more realistic, yeah.
Or like duos and stuff.
I mean, RS3, I would still say, like, because of how they did the KC system with the ancient ceremonial, pretty much guaranteeing you have 100%, like, you always have KC. I mean, in RS3 now, you and your buddy can teleport into the room, duo the boss in an inventory easily, teleport to a bank, regear, teleport back, and do it again.
Yeah.
Like, Like I was doing that with one of our other buddies quite a bit too when I was playing RS3, where we would just the two of us would go in, slaughter necks, teleport out.
Sure. Yeah, see, I feel like there's a sense of accomplishment from the act of staying at a boss for a prolonged period of time when banking is not an option.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like the ability to just jump in every, like, oh yeah, let's just quickly tele out, re put up a gear, jump back in, um, like that ability to be instantaneously back into the boss rooms and stuff like. I mean, granted, we'll never have that in old school, but like that idea is like to me is a killer because um you know I don't know. For me, there's like a level of enjoyment from being able to stay at a place for as long as I can, deal with the that's kind of like as annoying as some of the combat achievements are for like the TT2 bosses, where it's like you have to do like 5 perfect kills in a trip. Um, there's still
I
like the idea of those combat achievements are still somewhat interesting for me.
mean, I think it's content well needed. I think that there needs to be a balance on that. I definitely don't think that old school should introduce what RS3 did, where it's like a boss hub that you can go to that you can teleport to any of the bosses. I
Sure.
don't think that's the play in any shape or form. I do think that like gear presets would be a heavily appreciated thing, but that's not really directly like that might semi impact kills per hour, but I wouldn't say that it's going to be the do all end all. Like all of a sudden you're getting double the KC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like
What's like the gear setups thing? What's this pre like? Is it just like what we have for like bank layouts?
kinda. So what? It's a step further than that, where you can literally press. So like it has buttons across the bottom, or think of it like our preset buttons. But when you tap on it, instead of instead of it just showing you what was in that gear,
Mm.
it would automatically put on all the gear that you wear for that tab and fill your inventory as if you were about to go do the boss.
Oh,
So
I
it's a one
see.
click, it would empty out your inventory and replace it with all the stuff you originally had.
I see. Okay, gotcha.
So like
Mm.
it'll speed it up because of like the re-gearing perspective, but huge quality of life in my opinion. Like imagine gearing like being able to gear for Tob in a second because all you do is you go into Tob, you press one button, and all of a sudden you've got all your gear on. Your ruin pouch is full of the right ruins, and
Mm. The only way that I would be happy with something like that is I feel like it should be like something like a perk or something that you obtain, or kind of like the bank slots and stuff that you buy, and you can only have a limited amount of them rather than just like
right.
infinitely having like all these gear preset ups. Because I feel like part of the like this is such a small thing, and I think I get why that could be appealing for a large number of players. For me, I feel like one of the you don't want to be like I get why people want to play this game and just like log in, gear up, and just go, and I completely appreciate that. But there is a level of just knowing you're what you're gearing in. Why are you wearing X, Y, and Z? You're not just being told what to wear. You have an understanding of why you're supposed to be wearing what you wear. Why do you take a BGS to TOB when you have hammers? It's like, things like that. Um,
I guess though on that front though, like I feel like that's also partially because you are someone that wants to know those things.
yeah,
Like there's a lot of people I would say in our community and in general that really don't care the reason why. They'll just do it because they were told to do it.
yeah. I feel
And
like also gone.
no, I was just gonna mention, like, I think that's also part of the reason why you see sometimes people using things incorrectly, but that's perfectly fine in my opinion too.
Oh, 100%. Like I said, I understand the appeal for I understand the appeal for something like, this pre set up thing. Like, I completely get it. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I just think that if you're going to have something like that, it should be a benefit that is earned, not just given. Um, the room pouch, for instance, like the actual act of having the room pouch, like you have to obtain the room pouch first, and you have to obtain the thread, and then you know the configure thing kind of comes with the base room pouch. I would imagine it's not like, because obviously you can't have all forms of the pouch straight off the bat, but
You know, I could see them introducing the presets very similarly to like the bank expansion,
yeah,
where like it literally is like, okay, the first preset is 2 mil,
yeah,
being able to create one preset, and then upwards of 6 presets, and at 6 presets, it's like 400 mil.
yeah, yeah,
So I mean, you can use those presets all you want, but you might want to fine tune it for the content you want to do, and then you can try to reset it for the next content. Because like RS3, I used to use the presets a lot for skilling too.
yeah,
Because you go into the bank, you press one key, and it would replace all your adamant plate bodies with adamant bars.
yeah, yeah. I don't have a problem with that. I like, yeah, because it's the same with like the bank slots, isn't it? Like, you pay for like the bank slots. So you pay like
Right.
3 mil, 5 mil, 10 mil, 20 mil, and it goes all the way up to like what, like 260 or something crazy like that.
I think even more. I think it like gets close to 1 bill.
Yeah. So, it's definitely not like a far fetched idea in terms of like just paying for it. I think it's a good way to sink money as well. Like, people will pay
Yeah.
to have their top layouts just instantly, just Instapot up.
And I think thematically it makes sense too to put it in the like have you pay GP for it, because it's the bankers that are literally like they're prepped to just like throw the gear at you and just you throw all your gear at them to like
Yeah.
replace. You know what I mean? Like they're helping you change your gear.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I think there should be something that you kind of earn alongside it. I don't think it's just like a pay for and then just done. I think there should be some like a way to earn it, or at least earn part of it, and then you like pay for like however many you want. But even if it's just something fairly simple, you know, like in the grand scheme of things, a room pouch is obtained on your way to um on the road to Slayer anyway, and then the thread you get if you want to go to TOA, I guess. I suppose you don't technically have to, but
Couldn't they? Well, I was just thinking, couldn't they do something similar to like Daddy's Home with like the construction training method? Doing something similar to that for like uh understanding the life of a banker. You know what I mean? Like kind of like doing like a mini quest or something along those lines, like barbarian fish, like the barbarian training, for example. And they're at the very end of it, they're like, okay, you've completed this. Here's now one preset.
yeah.
But you only get one, and you can buy more later. But for just finishing it, you get one, so you can play around with it and learn it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to something of that nature. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking when it comes to that kind of idea. Yeah, I suppose I don't really have that much of an issue with there being like, say, six presets if you're paying like, 1.5 bill.
Yeah, like you're just kissing money goodbye. I
Yeah,
think I like what they did with the bank expansion that they have right now, where it kind of like gradually builds up.
yeah,
Because it's not like right away, right off the bat, like, oh, you want 40 spaces, 100 mil.
yeah,
No, like in the beginning, it's like 40. Okay, you want 40 spaces, 500K. Okay, you want 40 more. Okay, now it's 2 mil.
yeah,
Oh, now it's like you see, like, then it kind of makes it where, like, do you really need that much space in here? You
Yeah.
like I feel like I'm 100% in that case where like I was looking at it and I think I like stopped right at like the quote unquote highest efficiency cost before like it just gets unrealistic because I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna pay I'm not gonna pay 100 mil for 40 spots.
Yeah. It'd be completely different if there was like loads of different metas that you needed and you needed loads of different gears for loads of different things. But even then, there's so many bank slots. It would work if we
Right.
had like it would work if I suppose say we had the exact same amount of gear and items and like requirements for like say like master clues and stuff like that, blah 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 blah. But only had a fraction of the size of a bank previously, like prior to the expansion. So say like instead of I think it was like 840 slots, including like if you're what you call it, like a
Choose
member and
two two
yeah,
step authenticated or whatever.
yeah, exactly, like all that good stuff. Like if you exclude all those kind of bits, you know, if it was like say like 500 slots, even less, like 300 slots, then people would be like, you know, especially like Iron Men and all that, we would be like, even us, we would as mains, we'd probably be freaking out over a change like that because you'll be like, I can barely hold like all of my gear. I need something to hold my gear. So you'd be willing to
And,
save up for that higher bank space, but because we've already been exposed to 840 for the best part of like 8 years at that point, if not longer, kind of nullified.
well, I mean, I think the other side that they kind of had it where it wasn't that painful was the fact that you can build that costume room in your house. I mean, that
Mm,
costume room can hold a shit ton of gear.
yeah,
I mean, that's a way that a lot of UIMs kind of like store a lot of their gear, so they
yeah,
don't have to like death drop it every time.
yeah, yeah, 100%. It's I actually don't think that like those kind of things, like those kind of functionalities that the Jagex put into the game is actually quite useful. I find like they're just as good of a function as the whole like making a tradable item untradeable when it's attached to certain things.
Hmm.
Like I like those kind of concepts where they're utilizing like already kind of semi existing functions to allow things to be a bit more useful or you know um more convenient, you know, more sought after, um, or even from an aspect if I'm like speaking specifically on you know like making tradable items like the Avernic hilt untradeable, even if you dismantle it, like the whole fact like if you try to dismantle it, it actually just fully breaks it. Like you'll never get it back. It's like your one stop. Like once it's there, it's gone. Like you'll never see that item again in the market. It's gone.
Hmm.
Well, apart from if you get PK'd for it, then I guess someone got a little bit
Gorilla,
lucky. Yeah, but
which that still makes it. I mean, in current state, that's like a 63 mil gold sink.
yeah, exactly that. Because I think that's another thing as well as being able to have certain things like become like gold sinks and
And I think they did Blorvo right on that front too, from a gold sync perspective, because you have to
mm,
put. It's not just you get your cosmetic change, but then you also have to dump what it was a pretty large chunk of blood runes into it too, don't you?
oh yeah, you have to put 60,000 blood runes into it, cheeky bastards.
Yeah, I like that. I personally kind of like that concept because it turns that into a little more of a gold thing, but
Mm,
it's also like a prestigious thing to have. Like I would have loved to see something like that when they did the Fang ornament kit too,
yeah,
or if they introduce a Shadow or Tebow ornament kit later. I want to see something like that.
yeah. I would love to see a fucking. I'd love to see something like that, like a Tebow or a Shadow ornament kit. We got one for the scythe. We got two for the scythe, and then none for the others. How ridiculous is that?
Yeah, I was quite surprised that with TOA they didn't introduce that.
Yeah,
Like, I get why Chambers didn't have it because, well, CM Chambers was already out when Hard Mode Top, because Hard Mode Top was kind of the first one to introduce that.
yeah,
Well, I shouldn't say that. The first one to introduce it into like mega rares, because I mean,
hmm,
Chambers, you had it with Ancestral,
yeah,
and I suppose you were. Well, that maybe was one of the first instances of a weapon. I'm trying to think here on like weapons earlier outside of clue. Well, clues you had technically with the ornament kits, but I was just trying to
mm,
think like where you have. Oh, you had God Wars blades. You had ornament kits too, because
yeah.
I was just trying to think around how much we've had weapon ornament kits. I guess outside of clues, there is really none.
No, there isn't. The especially on the mega rares. Like even like the Sang and the Grazi Rapier got technically, ornament kits on it, and the Grazi Rapier looks next to no fucking difference.
Yeah.
And yet the T-bow, I feel like a lot of people since the most recent Dead Man, a lot of people are like, I really like the corrupted version of the T-bow and the Shadow.
Oh, I had that as my transmog for a while there.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's like a go-to transmog for a lot of people, and it's like, hang on a minute, how do you not see the appeal for this? So it's
Or like they tried to introduce a Bandos ornament kit. Like I think that there's a lot of possibility there where they should start trying to introduce more ornament kits on that,
yeah,
because I think it gives a little more customization and freedom in your designing.
100%, and it gives some like people like myself more so than I know you, at some point you like to go for various bits and pieces, but you're maybe not quite as keen as I am because you've got other goals, but you still go for them like the Fang. You've got what four like three out of three for the CM kits as well.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
like,
and well, I'm a huge ornament kit fan though in general. Like I've got
mm-hmm,
all of my God Sword blades that I have. I put ornament kits on those. Like
yeah,
uh, at some point, as much as it pains me to do it, I'm gonna have to go to Bounty Hunter and try to get the Dragon Warhammer
yeah,
ornament kit,
same,
because
yeah,
it is a nice ornament kit. Like I'm not gonna say it's not.
yeah. I agree. Yeah, I'm not.
Masori, I would love to see an ornament kit there.
I would actually. So I actually had an idea about this. I'll finish this Duke kill here real quick. I actually had this on my notes somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. Annoyingly, I chucked my phone away. But yeah, I think the whole idea of like cosmetic scape for me is like, I love it. I love I love the idea of cosmetic scape or fashion scape, however you want to call it. Um,
I
oh,
I
one
think
sec.
it keeps the game fresh. I think it makes it so you can kind of show your own style instead of efficiency scape with like everyone just running around in full graceful.
Yeah, 100%.
Like forestry, I think hit the nail on the head with that. With having the ability to build the item that you can put lumberjack into it,
Mm,
and then
yeah,
you don't even have to wear the backpack. You just have to have it in your inventory. I think they hit the nail on the head there. Now you can wear whatever you want with it.
yeah. Oh, no shot. I don't think I've got it here. Oh, that's hella annoying. I mean, I've got another idea here already written down, but um, yeah. Basically, I had this idea. I'll see if I can try and recall it, but it might be a little bit janky in how I recall it. But essentially, I had this idea. So you know how we have Slayer Masters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the idea was that it was a NPC who would essentially give you. It was kind of like a cross between Slayer and combat achievements, essentially. So he would basically go and get you to do like these extensive pieces of tasks, like go kill Olm in like X amount of gear cost, or under a certain time, or with X amount of players, or whatever the challenges may be. And this spans across like all the different contents, or but basically you would what like his shop was purely for like cosmetic based items, so you
Mm-hmm.
can't sell them. It's purely cosmetic, but it's a whole person dedicated to just purely like more like end
Ornament
game slash
kits.
ornament kits and grinding and stuff like that. So it's like you could have you know do you remember the old design of Missouri before we got the design that we have now? Do
I
you
don't
remember?
recall it.
It looked more like one of the actual gods from like the whole Egyptian god. Um, it had like more of a. I'll see if I can find it for you and send you the photo of it. But there was quite a few designs that they had. Like there was the Tumican Shadow, like the blood, like I can't remember what it was called now, but it was like the blue version of it, like a blue shadow essentially. Um,
Well, they before that they had the Tumican Shadow was a three tick weapon that every fifth attack hits on a 4 tick cycle but hits harder.
yeah,
Was it something like that?
yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, I remember something like that being mentioned. I'm trying to find the photo. I'll see if I can post it
Oh,
on
I
here.
thought. Well, no, that's not it. It was kind of. I'm trying to like look through Reddit to see if I can find it.
Yeah, I'm trying to go through my phone because I for some reason I screenshot RuneScape
Oh, I
related.
found it. Yep, I found it. It's I'll send it to you right now.
Yeah, but it's the blue shadow,
Was it
right?
this one?
Let's have a look.
Well, this was the Missouri.
Oh, the Missouri. No, not that. No, completely different
Oh,
Missouri. I will find it. It will take me a few minutes here, but I will find it. And when I find it, I will kill you. It's actually funny. While scrolling through, I've just found the Wilderness Extension blog post that they made back in 2022. Do you remember that?
yeah. Oh, with the extension you said.
The Wilderness expansion that they were talking about.
I think that's still in the works. To be honest, that was done during the game jam.
Yeah. Oh, I found it. Hang on. I'll redo that, and then which means the shadow should be here somewhere, maybe. Actually, furthermore to what my point was, there was also conversations. Well, someone posted a picture of Missouri boots. So it was an ornament kit that went onto your Pegasians, if you remember that.
I'd say yeah. I mean, I think that there should be something even with Prims.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. There's the Missouri boots. Oh,
Like, I think that that's worthwhile content, in my opinion. Like,
oh, found it.
um, kind of helping people with their fashion scape too. Like,
Yeah.
if you're wearing best in slot gear should look good together. Like, let's
Yeah.
be honest here. Like,
I've just posted the pictures to you. I'll put them up on the screen as well so people can have a look and understand what the bloody hell I'm talking about. But these were like various ideas that were posted on various places. I think Twitter from like Sopham, I think is her name or something like that. Um,
the Tumikin's Eclipse is fucking dope.
yeah,
Like that, or if they would have done that as an order, maybe they, because looking at the level that that model is there, I would be surprised if that's not actually already in the code.
I'd like to think that it is, but who
I bet
knows?
you I have one way to find out. Actually,
But
no. It's not in the code because
Yeah.
the transmog kits, the transmog plugin actually also pulls in um, designs that almost got released and then they stopped.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's how I was able to get my bandos to look like the bandos with the ornament kit.
Yeah. But there was so there's obviously, that as an idea, they have like massive room to make these like the Missouri boots, the old Missouri design that was that I showed you there, the Tumican Shadow. But this was basically like this NPC where you would actually gather points via, going out and completing these various different tasks that would maybe even randomize, maybe not every day, but every week or something like that you could do, or just to keep things like spiced up and stuff and never just like flat out the same. Or if he does give certain tasks, like there's buffs to certain tasks that you might get per week, so you might have like 1 week is like it's Cox week, like people, like he'll give you extra points if you go and
Cox for a
do.
double point or
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
exactly. um to and
Well, but then you might run into daily scape.
Yeah, you might run into daily scape, but let's be honest, if you're playing RuneScape every single day anyway, like, and you're probably, and at least it's content that people are going to be doing regardless anyway. At that point,
Right.
like I'd run that shit regardless, purely off the basis that I know that I'm grinding towards these crazy looking cool cosmetics, and it can be updated with various things. Like, it doesn't really take much artwork to, you don't really need to do anything. It's not like you're making a whole new what do you call it, you're not making a whole new like set of bosses and stuff like that. You're actually using the existing stuff. It requires very little. um
It's mainly work on the art team to design it. And that'd be it.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and someone coding in an NPC that can basically do the job for us to hand out all these different challenges, and that's pretty much it. And then just updating the store, or even if it just remains a Slayer, it just has different rewards each week. So it's hard for you to obtain certain rewards until they're released on a certain period.
I was just thinking, looking at that picture of the Tumikins Eclipse that they had there. Imagine if they did that color scheme with the Missouri.
Oh my word, yeah, no, the Missouri would look phenomenal.
Like you replace all the gold because like right now I've got it where I actually prefer the look of Missouri without it being fortified over fortified. I think it looks way better in my opinion.
Um, I would have to disagree on that one. I prefer it fortified. I like the bulkiness of it. I think
See, I like the leniency, like the lean aspect of it, just mainly because of it being a range gear,
yeah,
like not having big shoulders in the way.
yeah. I am fan of big shoulders, but I think
But I mean, still, they change you replace all that gold with silver.
yeah,
If you do that, um, maybe the red shade with blue, and then you keep like with a lightish blue, and then you just kind of keep everything else the same. That would have looked pretty toy.
yeah,
It probably would have looked good with the regular uh, Ava's assembler too.
yeah. Actually, actually brings the original waivers back in fashion. But yeah, like this is the thing though. I just think there's a massive market for cosmetic items, like, and going out, and like some of it can be grindy. Like, I don't mind the idea that some of it is grindy, like the CM ones in the hard mode top ones. They're more notoriously grindy because, well, it requires you to actually go and grind out repeatedly the same piece of content over and over until in a more difficult and timed manner. Um, Whereas,
I think that's one thing we'll start seeing more too. To be honest with you, is like seeing a quote unquote hard mode of something
mm-hmm.
that gives an ornament kit.
Yeah, 100%. I think seeing DT2 do it as well is, you know, a testament to that statement as well. I think because, well, it's again, it's happened. It happens over and over. Ooh.
Well, you look at recently, like major updates that hit that are not a port, like a back port.
Mm-hmm.
They've done it. I mean, hard mode Tob did it.
Yeah.
TOA, they did it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Chambers, they did it. I mean, I kind of wish they did it with Fasani's Nightmare
Sure.
instead of just making a pet transmog and the teleport. Like it would have
Mm-hmm.
been awesome to see an ornament kit on Inquisitor.
Yeah, I think there was definitely room for um things like Inquisitors and Justicia to be, you know, to have ornament kits to them. My biggest problem I think with those two is that they're not used very often. Um,
Well, now they are, yeah.
I'm hoping the Colosseum will change that perspective on said items because I've heard both like it's swung kind of both ways that Inquisitor will be used just as useful as the Justicia, but it's kind of like if that's the case then that's great because there's like meaning behind the items again. They're not just kind of like troll items at this point, but I'd like to think that
Well,
they'll be useful, and if they have ornament kits behind them then I think that actually increases their value as well because they might actually look really good. You might have like a red version of Justicia that looks like that fits
great with the
like
Dinny.
yeah, exactly, that's what I was gonna say. um, and the Inquisitors is got like a lighter version, just like like a holy version of the Inquisitors. I don't know what you, but this is the problem as well. Is like the Inquisitor and Justicia are quite literally supposed to be kind of like their polar opposites if you think about it. So
Right.
it's kind of
Well, and
difficult.
also kind of going back to when I sent you that, I want to get your opinion here. What's your opinion on the praise the sun god upgrade to proselyte?
Praise the sun god. Wait,
If you go look at the picture I sent you, that is what they're proposing is going to be proselyte's upgrade and how it's going to look.
what, the Missouri?
Not the Maso. So like there's the picture of the boots, the quiver, and then there's a person standing there with a sun mask on.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were talking about that. Wait, sorry.
No, no
So,
worries.
wait. So, what are you comparing it to, or what are you? Sorry.
I want to get your opinion. So the armor on the very far end with the
Mm-hmm.
sun
Yeah.
mask,
Yeah.
that is supposed to be the direct upgrade of proselyte.
Oh.
And everyone's been memeing the shit out of it, saying it looks like the Dark Souls guy of like praise the sun.
Oh my God. Whoever fucking came up with that, they're not fucking wrong. That's so jokes.
The
Um,
mask, I feel like they got to. I really hope that's not their final design of it.
I feel like they would have maybe put some effort into it, but at the same time,
Well, I mean, like the boots look awesome in
yeah.
that picture. Like I like the way that they built the Echo boots. I think is what they're calling them or something like that.
Okay.
Like that's dope.
Yeah.
The quiver, I think they did a really good job with the quiver.
Yeah. Um.
Oh,
Eh,
praise the sun god, they struggled at. It's almost like the
uh.
art team literally put their whole effort into the other two and then said, "Yeah." I was playing a little Dark Souls today.
Yeah. Do you know what? I kind of. I love the boots, even though they kind of give me you know, like Primordial and stuff like that, like the actual design of them. I mean, they look good, don't get me wrong, but they look very similar to like Primordials and Pegasians and stuff, with the wings and stuff.
Well, and I think they did that on purpose though, because it's a direct upgrade of Guardian boots, which have those wings on them.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So I mean, I think that is semi intended on that. I think maybe the quiver for the back, they could have maybe made the quiver a little longer.
Yeah, I that's what I was thinking. I was kind of hoping they would make it a little bit more fancy, a little bit more just better looking. Um,
I just hope that they do make a little bit of a rework of the Sun God.
yeah, I'm like in my mind that with the when it comes to the quiver, do you know what it kind of reminds me? Did you ever play Witcher 3?
A little bit, yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know if you remember at the very beginning when you're like when you very first start playing and you go up into like the castle and you've got all those like guys like chilling in the castle and they've got um like the banners and stuff like that around it. It kind of gives me like that kind of vibe, like this like Witcher kind of vibe. I don't know. It just I get this. It's a medieval game, but I was just kind of expecting something a bit more old schooly about it. I don't know. I don't like it, and I don't know how to describe it, but I don't like it. But it's a quiver at the end of the day, so. Oh,
I'm
no.
kind of curious why they didn't do a design that made it where, because like that quiver, to my understanding, can hold arrows and bolts. I'm kind of shocked they didn't try to do a design that kind of helps meet both of those, like the purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe it's not a quiver on your back, maybe it's on your side, or like you know what I mean? Like it's a pouch on your side.
Sure.
Or like I don't know. I'm trying to think on like where you could possibly put like where I have no idea where you would put bolts. I never really thought about that. Like I feel like a deep quiver like that, you drop a bolt in there and you're like rummaging to try to pull out a bolt before you fire.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, typically, from if I remember correctly, there's already a bolt collector, not bolt collector, but like a bolt pouch thingy.
Bolt pouch.
Yeah, and it goes if you actually equip it, I think it puts it on your character's leg. If I remember correctly, puts it on.
Yeah, or the other thing I was thinking they could do, maybe this is what they're planning to do with that, is like to make it be able to wield bolts, you have to go get that bolt pouch. And then you combine it with the quiver, and then instead of it maybe the pouch being on your leg, it's actually like strapped across your chest. Because it's like part of the band that's holding the quiver in.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think that there's plenty of different ways that you could design that one. It's but that design definitely does not fit my I don't know. I mean,
your want on it.
Yeah, but that's I suppose it's my, you know, it's coming out next week. There's no bloody chance that they're going to be changing the design 1 week prior to, but.
Well, they might do something like they did with Torva.
Do you know what?
Remember, they completely reworked the Torva design after releasing it.
This is true. This is true. And it only took us like what, a year and a half, 2 years to get the Blood Torva that everyone had been ranting and raving for.
True. Yeah, everyone wanted hard modes.
Maybe
they wanted it on. They pretty much wanted it on Justy. If I remember right, it originally was everyone was trying to push that you could put the blood kit or the sanguine kit on Justy to make it look like what Blood Torva looks like today.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I suppose that probably makes more sense, doesn't it? I mean, I think where it comes from in DT2 also makes sense, though. I don't think it's wrong that it comes from here either, but.
No, originally, like the sanguine kit. I mean, that was just because at that time Torva was not in the game yet, and you already had the Justy armor right there. Like, if anything, I would say Blood Torva coming from DT2 bosses makes the most sense to me than even putting it at hard mode top, because Torva is a Zeros armor
Mm-hmm.
and DT2 is around Zeros. So
Yeah.
having it like that definitely makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that, like, even though we had to wait God knows how long, I do prefer the way that the Blood Torvas come out now. I'd rather it be Blood Torva than Blood Justicia, and then I just sit there and be like, oh, that's a nice looking Justicia that's never gonna leave my bank. You know?
I mean, it seems like though they are trying to pivot towards defensive gear too. Like you look at what they're doing with the next version of um like the Barrows 2.0 that they're proposing that's coming out next week. To
Mm-hmm.
my understanding, the whole purpose of that is don't go in with your best in slot DPS gear. You should go in with your best in slot tank gear.
Justy Ellie, here I come.
That's why I've got my full Justy and my Dins. I bought that 2 weeks ago because I was like, just in case it is that way. Like, I mean, I'm going to use the gear anyway if I ever want to try to get Xanites on my Gim or anything.
Yeah, no, for sure. That makes sense. Yeah. I'd like to see more cosmetics coming into the game. That much I do know. At least as an end game player, like, even if it's just additional, like, oh yeah, you need to get like 3 more stuff from hard mode tabs, you know, even if it's just from the same content, just the idea of being able to, like, you know, build out
Your ornament kit.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, I'm all for it. I love sitting there hunting ornament kits. Like, I knew that's always been something that's heavily interested me.
Yeah.
I wish that they had an ornament kit for the Blood Fury. Like, if they, for everything that's heavily used for endgame, I wish they made an ornament kit for it.
I definitely think that they have room for a lot of different designs in lots of different pieces of gear. I'm still surprised to this day that the Twisted Bow hasn't got one, at least. For as long as it's been out.
Well, and especially, like, if they wanted to build more, I don't know, maybe that's because it's forcing people to do PvP. I was going to say, why didn't they introduce a point system with Deadman mode?
Oh, what, like leagues?
Yeah, like they could have introduced something like that, and then you could spend the points to get a corrupted ornament kit. And the corrupted ornament kit could be used on the Shadow, the T-Bow, the Scythe.
No, that's not a bad idea. That would actually probably make me play Deadman mode. I won't lie to you.
That's what I mean. Like, at least it would have made me, like, go through, start to suffer at it, get pissed off,
get it,
probably quit it, and then come back later.
Yeah, get insta dropped by some, like, level 20 who rushed, like, the first, like, couple hours of the game. Yeah.
It probably would convince me to start Deadman mode, get frustrated, quit, then see it's going to get listed on the Grand Exchange after, and then just go try to buy it as soon as the store opens.
Yeah. Sounds about right. Nah, do you know what, like, the fact that, you know, they do actually, like, have those kind of rewards and stuff, even for Deadman. I think doing that for Deadman, actually, do you know what? That's not a bad idea, and I'll tell you why. I reckon that if they had that kind of idea placed for Deadman mode, like they do for leagues, I feel like people like myself, and, you know, people who don't really PvP all too much, would be far more inclined to give it a shot and see what happens. Because ultimately you're going to be sitting there thinking, well, you know, I want this ornament kit, right?
I mean, I'm not against the concept of Deadman, mode, I like the way that they did it with the increased XP rates and things like that.
Mm,
I just wish it was a little less punishing. That's the only thing for me. Like
mm,
uh losing your entire bank besides the 10 items in your storage box, that's harsh.
yeah.
I think what it should be is that you lose all the items on your character and that's it. And I think if that was the case, I'd be much more willing to run Dead Man mode
Mm,
because it would make it a little more exciting to me. Like I am not against trying to do skilling on a PvP world kind of a thing.
yeah, for sure. I'm not proposed to.
Like it,
I like the whole idea of like being scared and petrified if you get a drop in like chambers or something, and you got to go outside to re-gear and everything. Like that shit. Like I remember seeing that with like Boaty and that, and I just thought it was fucking hilarious.
yeah, I think it's fun on that concept, but then I think what you dealt with a lot with watching Bodhi is like AHKers, like the people
Mm,
that like ruin the like. It's not just someone sitting there that's got insanely fast reaction time that was able to telly block him and start attacking him. No, the person's running a script.
yeah, for
It's
sure.
the same thing you see on PvP worlds. If you accidentally with the Ring of Wealth teleport to Throne of Miscellanea,
Mm-hmm.
there's $10 say on every high risk PvP world. There's probably a bot account sitting there waiting to teleblock you the moment you teleport in,
Oh,
like the same
100%.
tick you teleport in.
It's kind of like I suppose it's like it is just a wildy base flat, but like on high risk worlds when you go into the wildy, you
Right.
teleport to any of like the key places and you just forget that you're on that world, like KBD, Anakal, Wilderness, the Fountain of Ruin. That's the one that I was looking, the word I was thinking. Um, yeah, I think they definitely the like things like that will definitely get people like me a bit more like included into the PvP scene, and you never know really. All it could take is like something like that to get like more of the PVMers included um into the PvP scene, and you might have like a massive insurgence of people who are actually interested in PvPing just in the base game. Um,
Right.
which might spark an interest and that might cascade into in a good way, of course, into more people actually voting yes to certain PvP um, polls, because they're now more invested in the idea of actually being able to PvP with certain things or certain mechanics or new weapons or anything like that. So
Yeah, like I think it gives I just think that in my opinion, Dead Man mode right now, it's a little too punishing at the in its current state.
yeah, for sure. I can kind of
And
see. Sorry, go on.
no, I was just gonna say, and I think if they dial that back, I think you kind of offer a both side scale on it. Like maybe do if there's a permanent Dead Man world in which that's where you can maybe go for those ornament kits. Let's
Mm,
just use that as an example. In the permanent Dead Man world, you just lose all the items that your person has on you in that exact moment.
sure.
And if it's a the Dead Man mode tournament or a seasonal Dead Man, then I'd say that one, yeah, go ahead and set it up to full wipe.
Yeah.
And I think that what they did with this last Dead Man mode was the right play, where they made it where it was you had a 2 hour protection window when you logged in for the first time,
Mm,
and you had a 2 hour protection window, and then they also locked it to levels. That world is only available for 3 to 65, and then 65 to 90.
mm,
So then it prevented what essentially killed Deadman mode for me when it first got released, where I joined Deadman mode 2 weeks late, went to go kill chickens, and a level 126 one banged me. Oh,
mm.
that's fun. Level 5. This guy just is sitting there at the cows in Lumbridge, just killing everyone that comes through because he can one shot everyone. And since you lose all your items and your bank, that fucking blows.
And they say that you know, they wonder why the PvP scene is so dead. I mean, if you had to think,
yeah.
well, I suppose it doesn't really pertain to PvP, but in terms of like your normal original RuneScape PvP, but even still, that kind of mentality is what pisses a lot of people off, and probably creates that dislikeness for it, because it's such a.
Right.
I guess it's the same with people who. I think the PVM equivalent is people who are like that tob a lot. If you're a tobber, you're pretty much seen as quite a toxic person. I
Right.
mean, anyone who's played this game for a semi decent amount of time will know that if you go to top bank, especially on the high risk worlds, you know that
Or
you're gonna get,
416
or
or yeah.
416. You're gonna see some interesting characters, and not everyone there is a bad person. I don't think that many people are just having fun and having banter. It's just obviously it's hard to know that that person's having banter when it's
He's not
over
just flaming
text.
this guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just that. Well, and sometimes it is genuine, just like people just flaming each other for flaming each other's sake and all the rest of it. But um, it's one of those things where like I feel like PvP also gets just a bit of a bad rap for, you know, things like what you just described there. That's going to create some level of dislikeness towards that world because of that experience. It doesn't really help.
Right.
Like we were talking earlier about like the PvP updates, a lot of people doing spite votes over the chivalry, not the chivalry, but the combination prayers for incredible ultimate and steel skin. Um, you know, most people probably wouldn't have given two fucks if there wasn't this whole like spite voting stuff going on. I mean, is that the full story? Maybe not. I would probably say that at least from previous experience of seeing all these polls, it probably is. And then people just coming up with lame excuses as to why it shouldn't be in the game. But yeah, the whole
Right.
spite voting against PvP is it's just sad, really. Like there's a bunch of people, there's a very big community who enjoy the big the a large portion of the Twitch like Twitch streamers are PvPers. So obviously there's a
Following and a
mhm,
enjoyment
mhm.
of PvP.
Yeah, exactly. So for people to say that it's dead content, I just don't see it. I don't see how that's true because one of the big I was having a look on Twitch for the first time in God knows how long. Had a look on there. Dino is beating Boaty for streams
Yep.
by like 500-600 viewers. And then right underneath Boaty was skill specs, and right underneath that was Donator. So you've got loads of people who are, like in the PvP scene that are getting loads of views. There's clearly an interest in it. Are some of those viewers people who are just trying to stream snipe? Yeah, probably, but you probably get that with PVMers too in some instances. You probably get that if you went to a top bank and you've got people going, "Oh, I know they're in 416 and at top bank. I'm just gonna rock up and be an X, Y, and Z person."
Or
Um,
you got people that the latest thing you're seeing trend around is joining someone's party panel because they kept it visible and spam clicking during
oh my god,
POV.
that was so funny. I've seen people do that before, and it's the funniest thing, honestly. Um, I mean, again, those kind of things. It's like it's just funny. Like, does it fuck your run up? Yeah, but I don't know. If someone did that to me, I wouldn't be able to help but not laugh at that situation. It's just so funny. Um, it'd be a bit different if you were like 4 or 5 hours deep into like a hard mode, like grandmaster time and you're trying to break it, and you know you're on pace, and something like that gets ruined because someone snuck in and you know started trolling at like the worst possible time. But you know, outside of that, because that's most likely not the case, you know, it's just funny. But yeah, I think the whole spike voting and the PvP scene is it's just unfortunate to see that kind of stuff happen, man. Because I really do like the PvP scene. The person who got the whole like idea of old school RuneScape to come in, I think is like Wrecked or something, I think was his name if I remember rightly. I'm pretty sure he was a PvPer.
Yep.
Like, the reason old school is even playable and is probably as popular as it is pretty much because of PvP. And we're just sitting here idly just letting it die because some Iron Man got killed in the wilderness because they greeded too much and ended up losing 1.5 mil loot in spider eggs, and went and cried about it on Reddit. And it's like, dude, you're in the wilderness. That's what it's for. It's supposed to be risk versus reward. If you don't want to be in the wilderness,
Right.
don't go in the wilderness. If you're scared of PKers, don't go in the wilderness. At the same time, though, the fact that they're not able, like PvPers aren't able to get their updates out because of those people spike voting are in the wide majority, because you know whether or not PvPers are voting or not voting, I don't think they have enough people to outvote.
Well, and I think it's a mix of that. I think it's not even 100% people are like it. There's spite voting going on, but I think it's also kind of a mix of a lot of PVMers now view PKing as predator versus prey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's where more of the like it's not like in the past when you would do like making a pure account to go PK. Like I mean people still do that, but it's definitely not at the level it was in the past, right?
Mm.
And I think that's where the PvPers are kind of seeing this predator versus prey as the opportunity to kind of still keep PKing alive.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, it's pretty dead for them.
Yeah. Pretty much fighting the same people over and over and over and over and over again.
And there's the risk of it being an AHK here, which kills that vibe even more.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like I don't really envy them around it.
Yeah. It's a tough part, a tough community to be a part of. I do wish it was somewhat easier for them to be able to get the updates they want, even with no like. The other thing that got failed as well was, did you see that the Fountain of Rune update got failed as well?
That got failed because well, I hate to throw Behemoth on blast on this, like the Behemoth videos, but I feel like that probably contributed a little bit to like the negative view on it, where they were
Sure.
like, okay, just a bunch of bots are gonna go hit it up and print money there.
Yeah. Even though there's probably some very easy like ways to circumvent that very specific issue that's raised.
Right.
You know, it's I know that there was, I think there's a couple Reddit posts of people um that have managed to explain how, you know, it actually does work, and it will benefit the community, like the PvP community and stuff. Um, and it's just, yeah, it's crazy to see even something as simple as that is failing. I mean, realistically speaking, is anyone gonna like, the glories are already in the system, like people.
Well, the misery of trying to go for the eternal glory.
Yeah, I mean, you've also got the charge scrolls as well. if you remember, like you can get them as a reward. So if even if you're a main, you could literally just buy them anyway. Like
Right.
it just seems very backwards that an update as simple as that would help rejuvenate the wilderness is being shut down because of, you know, the idea that bots are gonna do something with it. The bots could already do something with it. Like they don't need this update for it. They
Right.
just, if anything, it would actually be worse for them to have. Yeah, it would be worse for the bots to have that update than it would be to
Well,
not have
it's
that
just
update.
crashing a lot of skilling methods that they probably are using. Like, I mean, blast furnace would take a hit from that alone too, if you think about it, because like people
Mm,
making bars to then smith and then to elk after. Well,
mm,
if you're able to mass elk stuff now, it just means that elking prices, like the GE buying price of those items, is going to be much closer to the actual um price of the high elk.
yeah. I mean, again, I don't even think glories are that far away from being at high out value anyway. If not, they're already at it.
Right.
I would imagine. I mean, do I have a glory on? Can I even? So G value. I mean, I've got glory. I've got a glory 3 on me right now, but I would imagine that it's not far from it. But the high out value for this is 10.5.
Well, so I don't think it's so much of a concern around like the high elk value of the glory. I think it's more relating to like, because originally part of the Fountain of Ruin proposal was that you'd be able to elk like 6 items at a time.
Yeah,
And
great
so
for
that was the main thing that I was looking at. Like, I think it's an interesting concept. It builds. It's kind of like what's going on with the statuettes or whatever that you can get from revenants,
mm,
where it's risk versus reward. Yeah, you can trade these things in for a 100K profit, but you also got to risk it.
yeah,
So like in the wildy here with that high elk, that means that you've got to bring in enough bodies to actually make it worth doing.
yeah. Because it's
Then
even
again, though, you could just teleport with the elite sword. You could probably make
mm,
a shit ton of money an hour, minimizing risk that way.
yeah. I'm just wondering if the way that they design the Wildy needs to be changed. Like I know that, you know, it's quite iconic how the Wildy is laid out the way it is, but like I'm wondering rather like making the Fountain of Ruin like harder, like hard, like much more difficult to be accessible, like or to leave or something like that. So like, but like obviously if it's like that, then the risk and the reward still is there. It's just there's more risk to people to do it because there's still such a high reward for it. I mean, if you're
Mm.
high alking 6 items every act like for one high alk,
You got to bring pretty big risk in
yeah, exactly. Um,
to make it worth it, I should say.
yeah, exactly. But then again, I'm trying to I guess if I'm trying to look at it from like the perspective of who's that going to appeal to? I mean, it'd be great for like maybe a beginning moneymaker if you'd just been cleaned or hacked or something like that. Not that I'd wish that anyone got either of those two done to them, but you know, or maybe if you're like starting off and you just, you know,
I'd say
you're
it's good for
ballsy.
Iron Man because
Mm,
like think about all like the CG grind, elking all of those items.
well, here's the thing. I mean, as an Iron, as a fairly high end based Iron Man, I wouldn't do it. And the reason being is because I could be doing something constructive while I do it. Like I could be training agility, getting my um getting my marks of grace in a safe location while I high out can watch a movie. So
True.
it's very difficult for me to think of a reason as to give myself a reason as to why I would explicitly do it. Then again, I'm only one person. I'm not an entire community. It could be very different. There could be thousands of people who are like, oh yeah, I would do it. I could make so much money off of this if I high alk at the right time. It could be 4 a.m. on a UK morning, right as all the US people are going to bed and the Aussies are still, out and about doing their thing before they get home. Oh, look at that. I can just quickly run to this new Fountain of Rune and high alk a few things before all the PKers log in. So it's like, I could see the appeal for it. I'm just wondering whether or not there needs to be something more to it. If the the concept of the idea is interesting. I'm just worried that no one's really gonna do it, and then you really do have a problem there, because the only people who will do it and recognize there is an issue with not an issue, but like, it's too quiet and the PKs don't come, then that's when the bots will start arriving, because they know they can get away with it. That's when it becomes an issue, and then the whole issue is exacerbated by the fact that people are going to try and manipulate that, and then the only real winners will be people who camp it, kind of like, how Framed does his whole Edgeville wildy camping.
I think one of the things that they could try to semi-counter on that is, remember with the Wilderness expansion, they want to add a separate region above the current version that would introduce essentially what you would call a lawless zone, where like your combat level doesn't matter. Someone can attack, a level 3 can get attacked by 126 if they enter that area.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think what you could maybe do on that front then is you could introduce, so like you have that area introduced for this new Fountain of Ruin, and I would say you put just like how you can't teleport after specking in a PvP world, why don't you put a 10-second logout timer after elking? So that you can't, like, the moment you see a white dot, log out. Because that's what bots are doing. They've got a program that literally says, see person, log out.
Yeah.
Can't do that now. If it's all the way up in this lawless land where you can't teleport out, it would be a good counter.
Yeah, no, 100%. It kind of goes back to that point we were talking about earlier with the scouts at the multi and the single plus bosses in the wildy. How, like, if you've got the fog, then if you try to log out to try and reset it, it wouldn't work, because it would work the same way as like how the gravestones and the skulls like carry over. So that kind of idea definitely mitigates against certain situations happening. I suppose with how deep the Fountain of Rune is as well, like the only thing as well is, like, because of where the Fountain of Rune is, I feel like it needs to be changed. I feel like it needs to be moved further away from an obelisk.
Yeah, that's the one thing I was thinking about, is you can just kind of flee to an obelisk and call her good.
There's not, oh my god, I keep doing that. There's not very much space between the Fountain of Rune and the obelisk to run, and if that bot somehow manages to have, I think, is it the Hard Wildy Diaries is the one that allows you to select your destination?
Yeah.
I mean, what is the wilderness?
I mean, there's probably a 50-50 odds that even if you randomly roll on that obelisk, you'll get to a zone that's below 30 wilderness.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and the requirements to actually do it aren't even, terrible. But
not that steep.
No, especially for probably a bot farm, but even still, I mean, I think the idea of having them in that lawless land actually kind of makes sense. Like, for me, like, having that wilderness rework where that land is lawless actually kind of makes more sense, because then it opens up a lot more opportunities for PKers. I mean, then again, I can already see it being absolute chaos for, like, how there's like quite a few pure clans. You got like a massive pure clan, and then you and your like 3 buddies who are just like, you know, going around just chilling, trying to like find a few PVMers in like the wildy bosses, and all of a sudden you just get like absolutely just
Jumped by like 40 peers.
yeah, just thinking, well, what's going on here? And then all of a sudden you just see a ton of Gmals just come flying through. But then again, I mean, if you see that happening, I don't think I could do anything but laugh if I saw that kind of situation happen. But then again, it might be different if I was a PKer and I just spent the last half an hour trying to find someone, which is another
Right.
issue I think with the wilderness. And I'm curious to know what you think, because my opinion on this is that maybe the wilderness is just too big. I know it's iconic
Yeah.
with what it is and all of the different landmarks of the wilderness, but maybe it's just too big. Like,
And that makes sense. I mean, it's too spread out that there's too many hot spots that a PKer has to check. But I still think though that it doesn't really resolve what I was talking about earlier, where the reason why a lot of people are spite voting is because that prey versus like predator versus prey.
mm,
Like let's say you collapse and shrink everything in where you can log in at one location and easily get to Callisto, Vedion, and Venenatis at the same time. it it's just going to create kind of more of that divide, I feel like.
um, yeah,
Like I think they've got to find a way to try to get away from that predator versus prey mentality
mm,
and make it so PvP, like real PvP, is actually enjoyable and worth doing.
yeah. I'm wondering if see, yeah, now this is where it becomes a bit more controversial. I was going to say maybe it's worth them only having like, and I mean like very few, like maybe even just one world where the wilderness is not the wilderness. Like PvP is just turned off in the wildy. However, by going into that world, because
Half the loop or something.
yeah, like the loot's just not there. Like all of the drop rates and everything just goes sky high, but then I don't think they can change it based on the world. I think it's a variable that just doesn't work because the worlds are just essentially just servers. That, well, actually, tell a lie because they hold profile. Well, no, because they can't change the base profile, so I don't think it would even work. So basically, like half of the stuff there just doesn't work. And actually, that would be terrible for like the Fountain of Rune update because then bots could literally just sit there and just run that shit. It would tank the price down of everything down. So yeah, that wouldn't work unless they made it
Yeah,
so,
like
unless they made it so that the Fountain of Rune actually doesn't work because PvP is disabled. But again,
I mean they would have to look at doing it similarly to like how RS3 did it
mm,
before they fully got rid of PvP. What they did for a period of time where it was opt-in PvP,
mm-hmm,
and then what essentially it would put a different style skull over your head, and then maybe what you would do is like, okay, wilderness is a non-PvP zone, but if you enable PvP, then your drop rates, like you can actually pull the uniques, and it's
mm,
something that you can't. The only way you can toggle it is if you leave the wilderness. So you can't just like sit there, kill the boss, and then like have the skull turned on, and then when you see an actual PK roll up, you quickly turn it off.
oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. Um.
Like you could do something like that, but like I would even go as far as saying with this, um, quote unquote, like with this toggle, like the bosses
Mm,
doubling the drop rate, I would say is not even enough to do. Like I feel like you almost need to quadruple it if you're going to do it in that way.
yeah.
Because the whole reason why the wildy bosses were designed the way that they were was for risk versus reward, and now we are taking the risk out of it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and this is why I was really on the fence of even saying the idea of turning off the wildy or even coming up with any similar ideas because it's like I don't like the idea of removing the risk versus reward. I don't like the idea of removing the ability for PKers to have the only kind of fun that they're allowed. And let's be real, I don't know about you, but even though like when you, especially when you see like a fat team, it's like, oh shit. But at the same time, there's a level of fun to it. I mean, belongs I'm not risking like, well, on my main, I probably wouldn't care too much because I like, let's say for instance, we had like a, let's say the Void Waker blade was still like 30-40 mil. You know, if I lost it or whatever, like it is what it is. I'd probably we'd just deal with the repercussions, or maybe we would like make the decision to anti PK. If I lost it on my iron, I'd probably be pretty upset. But
I
I,
guess like I think that yeah, I'm trying to think here on what actually would be the best method there. Because I think really what needs to happen is PvP it's in itself needs to be revitalized.
mm,
Like there needs to be more reward to PK like to PvP than there is just to PK.
mm, I think a big problem with PvP from a perspective of someone who doesn't really PvP, I think the biggest thing is just not knowing how to. Like, there's such a massive skill gap in between not knowing anything to knowing enough for you to go around and kind of do stuff. I mean, yeah, you see people going around and doing this kind of ragtag, salad robe, black D hide, RCB with opal bolts kind of setup and just hoping that you like, proc and then just Void Waker. But it's like,
Well, and I think though that they did kind of have a resolution for like the learning curve into PvP with the PvP arena and LMS, but PvP arena there is no reason to do it. So then that died on release. Like
yeah,
their rewards are pointless there. And LMS, the rewards are too good from a base level that everyone's bodying it or AHKing it.
yeah,
So like LMS could be the perfect solution in my opinion for a like a PvP learning process. But the thing is like you well you earlier you said you haven't done LMS. And when you go to LMS right now, it's you run into
mm,
bots, and then when you do run into a player, it's the most toxic asshole you could possibly run into, and they're probably AHKing too. So it's like it ruins the fun of that. Like I think
mm,
that when they should try to put a little more weight behind, they added in the high stakes mode that no one does.
mm,
Well, I should say actually, I think the high stakes mode gives the points because you're getting a point reward. No, actually, no. No one's doing the high stakes mode right now, and I think it's because of the AHK aspect.
sure,
And I think maybe what they can do from the high stakes is actually, I don't know, increase the bounty to get in, like the entry fee.
yeah,
Like you should offer in two solutions. You should offer a casual LMS option, and through that casual option, I would say you can only get cosmetics. Like
mm-hmm,
you can unlock cosmetics, or offer the high stakes where you can actually try to make a profit. And the high stakes, it's like let's say everyone puts 100K buy-in for it. And if 25 competitors walk out, then whoever is the last surviving person gets 2.5 mil.
yeah,
And then it's and you add that you build that with a rank system. So that way you don't have someone that's just a god tier PvPer nonstop just completely owning the LMS high stakes world.
yeah,
I mean, it's kind of like what they did with Bounty Hunter, where you couldn't do point boosting.
mm-hmm,
Um, you do the same here, so then people can't just buy kills or purposely crunch their rank all the way down so they go against worse players.
Yeah, for sure. No, that makes sense. Um, yeah, I mean, if they can mimic that kind of aspect, then I probably, yeah. For me, it's more about the rewards. Like Bounty Hunter, you know, for me, it's like, huh, maybe I should, you know, invest some time into actually going to LMS and actually, you know, learning various bits about PKing and stuff just so I can get the rewards. And maybe that's enough to get me interested into PvPing a little bit more frequently than I do or have ever done in my time of playing RuneScape. But
Yeah, I
um,
mean, I mean, once I max, I can see myself kind of stepping into that because I want the collection log slots there. But
sure,
I know that right now, going to LMS is just jam packed with bots and AHKers. So it's like, it's not really the fun experience you want.
no, I couldn't imagine it is, and yeah, it's a difficult one. Um, I do wish that I do hope that at some point um, that PvP does kind of pick up a little bit. You know, not
Yeah, I
just
think they need to start introducing items that are really PvP focused and not so much like PvP with PVM reward too.
yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. I feel like that's kind of like what the Elder Maul is for some PK builds. I don't know if you've
Mm.
been how much PvP stuff you do watch, but yeah,
Elder Maul is a pretty big go-to for PvPers.
yeah, um,
I think that's great. Like I think that one's great. I think that with Bounty Hunter adding the imbue scrolls for like the dragon, I mean the Abyssal Dagger and the Dragon Mace and
mm,
things like that. I think that was the right play.
for
I think
sure.
that spiced up the community, like spiced it up. I think that they shouldn't have locked those scrolls down to only being able to use in Bounty Hunter.
Hmm.
I think they should have allowed the Dragon Dagger improvement to go outside the will, like go into the wildy and go into PvP worlds.
Yeah.
I get why, like the Vesta Longsword, for example, is locked to Bounty Hunter
Oh God,
because
yeah.
that weapon's just fucking OP as shit. But I think it when it comes to these PvP weapon upgrades,
Mm,
I'd say let them have it.
yeah. 100%. Yeah. Who knows? I'm hoping at some point that they get some updates, man. I'd like to see some new metas come out because right now it's still
Yeah,
like harmonized orb and all that kind of nonsense. Um, yeah, but I think uh, I think it might be a good time to stop there. I think.
sounds good.
I think we've gone through quite a lot of topics.